Chapter 1308, Old Friends Reunite. Chapter 1308, Old Friends Reunite. The two ancestors of Heavenly Monster Tribe were creatures that had been living the longest lives in the world. Their levels and powers had a close relationship with their age. The monster body grew daily. To the warriors from other races, living longer didn't mean that they were stronger. However, to Heavenly Monster Tribe, their longevity was the key to their power. If the two 100,000-year-old monsters could fuse with each other using the secret technique of Heavenly Monster Tribe, how powerful could they be? What the president had said made Ling Xiong, Caesar, and Lorraine sink into their thoughts. They could feel the lightning rumble in their heads and make them baffled. What kind of Heavenly Monster Tribe's secret technique can fuse creatures together? How could they have such a wonderful technique? Lorraine was surprised. Tianxie, does your Chamber of Commerce's secret records have anything about the fusion, if any, of Heavenly Monster Tribe's two ancestors? Ling Xiong frowned. Tianxie was the name of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce's president. In this vast universe, not many people knew his name. The experts who knew this name were all ones with important roles and extremely profound power Upanishads. The record only says that they can fuse with each other, but it doesn't say how. I think these two ancestors of Heavenly Monster Tribe have never fused before. Because if they had, there would have been some rumors. Tianxie, the president, shook his head. Only when Heavenly Monster Tribe is in danger will they join hands to counter the enemy. He turned to Caesar. According to your sensibility, Lei should reach second sky of Immortal Realm. Qing Xiao is at the same realm. Heavenly Monster Tribe now has two monster ancestors at second sky of Immortal Realm. Heavenly Monster Tribe will stand on Shiyang's side. The God Clan will be more pressured. It's good then. Ling Xiong looked happy. That's how we can preserve our force. It's really tough when we count on only the bloodthirsty force when the God Clan's four great heavenly kings are at second sky of Immortal Realm in addition to the Godlord who is recovering. It will be easier when Heavenly Monster Tribe joins the team. Tianxie, De Carlos, is an uncertain factor. Only you know him in our group. You ask, will he stand on the same side as us? Lorraine's face became stern. Ling Xiong and Caesar also looked at the president. De Carlos was the most known expert with the highest attainment in cultivating space power Upanishad. According to Tianxie, he had entered second sky of Immortal Realm. It was a marvelous yet terrifying level of an expert cultivating space power Upanishad. It had the same meaning as the undying condition. An expert at second sky of Immortal Realm cultivating space power Upanishad was stronger than two experts at the same realm but with different power Upanishads. With this expert on their side, they didn't need to worry about the barriers in this vast sea of stars. It would be much more convenient. If De Carlos was with them, their force would be greatly enhanced, which would give them more advantages in the future. It was the reason why Ling Xiong, Caesar, and Lorraine cared about De Carlos's attitude a lot. I can't understand De Carlos. Tianxie's eyes shot out a strange light as he said calmly. But I'm sure he won't be on the God Clan's side or join hands with the bloodthirsty force. The relationship between De Carlos and Ming Hao is something we should consider too. It's between a friend and enemy. I'm not really certain. Listening to him, Ling Xiong and the others were surprised and guessed the relationship between De Carlos and Ming Hao. Tianxie hadn't explained it to them yet. He only said, back to the topic. You guys need to take action now. Go to Prosaic Star Area, Hollow Fearsome Star Area, and Dry Bone Star Area to persuade them to stay on our side. Got it, the other three nodded. Thunder Firmament Star Area. Shiyang got up. The scorching lightning beam winding around him released a fierce electric current. When he opened his eyes, he saw an imposing man like a mountain standing upright in front of him. That man wore silver clothes, but his arms were exposed. Lightning beams were crawling on his arms like snakes. His eyes were like two lightning balls that would shake someone's soul hard, like getting hit by a lightning strike after one look at them. Ouyang Luo Shuang stood by the man, her face respectful but cold. She didn't say anything, but she looked like she was bullied. See? He wakes up now. He's fine, right? Little girl, you're annoying. Why were you persistent in stopping me? Why didn't you believe in this old Lei? His voice was like grumbling thunder pounding on people's eardrums. However, he seemed to not notice that he was spraying his saliva while talking. Ouyang Luo Shuang didn't know how to put up with him. She just quietly avoided him as she was afraid that his saliva would reach her. After Lei Di revived, he had caught up with the situation pretty well. He turned into his humanoid form and then came to look at Shiyang. Ouyang Luo Shuang had stopped him from bothering Shiyang. At that moment, Shiyang was burning by the heaven flames and he was in a magical comprehending circumstance. She was afraid that Lei Di would disturb Shiyang and make him fall into bedevilment. Lei Di thought that she was so annoyed, so he used a beam of lightning to tie her up. When Shiyang woke up, he untied her and yelled, "His marvelous change is done. It's not gonna hurt him if we wake him up now. This kind of body development happens really quickly. You don't need to worry a lot. You are it." Shiyang frowned, looking at Lei Di. "You've broken through to the new realm?" The lightning beams wound around his body like many snakes. It was lightning energy that overflowed. At his level, Lei Di's lightning energy shouldn't act that way unless he had just broken through to the new realm. "Kiddo, you got keen eyes. You're worthy of the one with our ancestral land's origin. Thanks to you, I've entered second sky of immortal realm. Haha, I can fight against Qing Xiao now. Last time, he defeated me. I lost the battle for the chief position. This time, I will have it back." Lei Di grinned. "Qing Xiao," screamed Shiyang. "His azure dragon. Qing Xiao is his name. Where is he now?" asked Lei Di. On Heavenly Monster Tribe's ancestral star, Shiyang observed him and sneered. "Currently, your Heavenly Monster Tribe isn't a strong force. Because of Azure Dragon, Imperial Dark Tribe can't obliterate your tribe. And now, you want to fight with him? Without him, Heavenly Monster Tribe couldn't have existed. You should thank him. Thank him for defeating you that year. I can tell if you were the chief of Heavenly Monster Tribe. Heavenly Monster Tribe might not exist by now." Shiyang didn't mean to stab Lei Di like that. At first glance, he knew this man had typical characteristics of Heavenly Monster Tribe. He was rough, brutal, and not really slick and sly. Most of all, he didn't have plans or patience. Lei Di might be an innate warrior with endless power on the battlefield. But if he was the chief of the tribe, he would have brought a deadly disaster to his tribe. As Shiyang had fused with the Grace Mainland's origin, he considered Heavenly Monster Tribe as his subjects. When he thought about them, he did it with the position of a superior. If he could choose, he would still choose Azure Dragon to be the chief. Lei Di could fight for Heavenly Monster Tribe, but he was just a pure warrior. He wasn't good chief material. "Hey, kid, your speaking isn't pleasant to my ears. If you didn't awaken me, I would have taught you how to speak for sure. But now, seize the time and get out of this Thunder Firmament Star area. Carefree and Light are about to get here. You can make no difference even if you stay. Also, De Carlos and I have to take care of you if you stay." Lei Di grinned and said, "De Carlos has lifted the seal. You can feel something, I'm sure. You cultivate space power Upanishad, so you should feel the change. With the relationship between you and the ancestral star, you can run away in any minute. I advise you to leave as soon as possible. Don't let Carefree and Light kill you in just a blink of an eye." Listening to him, Shiyang spun his soul altar and activated his space power Upanishad in the tier of powers Upanishads. Layers of space energy like ripples on a water surface expanded from his body. His god power circulated and was sent through his veins, releasing an aura of space blades. A marvelous energy seeped out from his bone and functioned as a space barrier to protect his body. It helped him adapt to strict conditions in any space cracks. From Shiyang, the space energy rippled and connected to Thunder Firmament Star area instantly. The star map of the entire star area appeared in his head like a three-dimension picture. His soul consciousness had expanded endlessly. Thunder Firmament Star area in his head seemed to shrink billions of times and become a nebula as big as a palm of a hand in his sea of consciousness. He could see everything happening in this star area. That nebula of Thunder Firmament Star area had an outmost orange light layer. That light layer was attacked fiercely. Cracks appeared. He was shaken, his eyes strange. He was really touched. Thunder Firmament Star Area was now a sand table that was billions of times smaller than the original. Although he couldn't check the small stars or use his soul consciousness to visit the life stars in this star area, he could see everything as if he had a bird's view. You've just reached second sky of incipient God realm. After this time, your body has sublimated, which has stabilized your realm. Lady snorted and then pouted his lips, shaking his head. Weak. Too weak. You can't even endure a blow from Carefree and Light. So, get lost. While he was talking, a space slit appeared. White-headed DeCarlos walked out from it. DeCarlos didn't look at Shi Yang but at Lady. He looked so thrilled. It's good to see you again. Lady laughed happily. Hey, buddy. You look much older though. I still remember your innocent look that year. Haha, you've reached the immortal realm too. Time flies so fast. The old friends reunited. They didn't even look at Shi Yang and Ouyang Luo Shuang or recognize the fact that Carefree and Light were about to come. The two friends immersed in their old stories and their old world. Shi Yang and Ouyang Luo Shuang exchanged the surprised looks. They looked at Lady and DeCarlos, who were like two talkative old women recalling their old junk. They didn't know what to do. After a while, DeCarlos finally reacted. He threw Shi Yang a glance without turning his head and asked skeptically, "Why haven't you left yet?" "I think I should stay and watch the battle between Carefree, Light, and you guys," said Shi Yang. "You're just at second sky of incipient God realm. You can't bear the shockwaves of our attacks. I advise you to leave and save us from more trouble." DeCarlos lowered his voice. "If you're here, I can leave in any minute. I want to stay and watch. Even if I can't, I'll still stay." Shi Yang was persistent. DeCarlos frowned and didn't talking more. "Suit yourself. If you die, it's your bad luck. Perhaps Ming Hao will find it amusing, though." Shi Yang was astounded. Chapter 1309. A Showdown of Immortal Realm Expert. Chapter 1309. A Showdown of Immortal Realm Experts. The void of Thunder Firmament Star Area was as bright and clear as a mirror without a speck of dust. DeCarlos had used his power to wash the place. He used his god power to seal the entire star area. However, as soon as his seal was lifted, the chaotic energy magnetic field created by the sudden change of earth and heaven energy immediately rolled over from every direction. It was because immemorial Thunder Dragon had taken in the energy of the peripheral area of Thunder Firmament Star Area that had changed the energy structure of the area massively. Currently, Thunder Firmament Star Area wasn't stable. DeCarlos could foresee the situation, so he had lifted up the barrier sooner. Otherwise, if he let Carefree and Light continue to attack the barrier, this star area would have exploded. If that happened, billions of lives would be buried and creatures would have to live in damnation. Also, as the seal was lifted, the great heavenly king Carefree and Light would come quickly. They then saw two bands of divine light shoot through the universe. In just a blink, the two lights had arrived in front of DeCarlos and Lady. Carefree's face was cold and calm like water. The moonlight in his eyes was like an ice sword that was brutally cold. He frowned and a cold moon appeared behind his head. That cold moon looked like an ice crystal. It was the essence of moonlight and starlight from a primal time. It was Carefree's cultivating path and the foundation of his incipient extent. He had crushed and combined so many moon nuclei to create this moon. It had Carefree's soul power that could change the moonlight that people thought never changed. As soon as his cool moon appeared, all the lunar stars in Thunder Firmament Star Area were burned and shot cold moonlight. At that moment, those moons spun and gathered by Carefree. Those silver rings emitted cold air currents. Carefree looked Ouyang Luo Shuang, his face tender as he called softly, "Come here with me." Ouyang Luo Shuang's eyes were bright but cold. She looked at Shi Yang and then Lady and DeCarlos before pondering. Then, she talked nothing and walked towards Carefree. She called him with her head low, "Teacher." Carefree looked happy. "It's good that you're all right. Your teacher has been really worried for you." Then, Carefree opened his mouth, releasing the essence of the moonlight that was like broken diamonds falling on Ouyang Luo Shuang. They entered her incipient extent through her glabella. It's the essence of the moon that I have for you. It can help you reach second sky of incipient God realm. Today, you know your teacher's identity, I suppose. Although you're not from my clan, the power Upanishad and the cold energy you had absorbed are similar to mine. Later on, only you can inherit and carry on my career. Ouyang Luo Shuang nodded quietly. People couldn't guess what she had in her mind from her tranquil eyes. Carefree, don't forget why we're here, Heavenly King Light intervened. His eyes were like a beautiful sparkling ocean. Shi Yang hallucinated that he was inside a sea of light. His soul was too puzzled so he couldn't tell. Shi Yang couldn't bear to look at Light's eyes. Of course, I won't forget it. After Carefree could confirm that Ouyang Luo Shuang was alright, he felt much better. The worries he had in his mind vanished instantly. He looked cold and wise as he always did. You're an alien in the bloodthirsty force. You're obviously Bloodthirst's successor, but you have space and star power Upanishads. Your star power Upanishad is derived from our light power Upanishad. I'm not sure if you're Bloodthirst's pride or our God clan's humiliation. It's a special case that you can use and fuse our supernatural technique. Carefree observed Shi Yang quietly. The cold moon behind him changed all of a sudden. It turned into a harsh, ruthless eye that was exactly like Carefree's eye. That massive eye created from the cold moon emitted cold, inhuman light. However, it had a gleam of holy moonlight that was strange, magical, and untouchable. As the eye was gazing at Shi Yang, he was quivering, his face distorted. The cold energy was like many sharp knives stabbing his flesh and soul altar to stir up his sea of consciousness. It attempted to cut off his emotions and desires, erasing his soul seal. It was only a look. It was only a look from Carefree. Shi Yang was frightened. At this moment, he had finally understood the power of the immortal realm experts. His power could invade and ignore Shi Yang's soul defense. It was true that nothing Shi Yang had could stop him. As he couldn't wiggle, blood trickled down the corner of his mouth. That trickle was his immortal blood that was like a beautiful ruby. Enough! Lei Di thundered. The overbearing thunder echoed from him as if countless worlds had just exploded at once to create earth-shattering energy. That energy was like an invisible undersea wave that wildly generated between Shi Yang and Carefree. It crazily expanded and directly attacked Carefree's energy. The space between Shi Yang and Carefree exploded, shattering piece by piece as if a massive beast was pressing on it. Billions of chaotic space currents with light, gust, icy sleet, thunderstorm, and endless darkness flooded Thunder Firmament Star Area. Thunder Firmament Star Area eroded as if it was acid pouring on the place. The star area was being eliminated by space streamers and being burned into a part of the chaotic space basin. There was a rumor saying that one day, the chaotic current of the space basin would overflow and flood the entire sea of stars. It was the day that the universe was gone. All the life stars, mineral stars, dead stars, and all creatures of different races would perish in just a glimpse of time. Seeing the energy come from the chaotic space basin in this sea of stars, covering it and devouring it, Shi Yang changed his face. He thought he was witnessing doomsday. The outer space streamers were like an extremely powerful erosive liquid that splashed between Shi Yang and Carefree, shattering the void and making it a chaotic space current. This space current expanded to 10,000 miles. The mine where Lei Di had been dormant, which was pretty far from their area, became nothing in just a blink of an eye. A bit further from there, several mineral stars and dead stars vanished at the same moment and disappeared into the chaotic space basin or became a part of this space current. If Carefree and Lei Di fought that way and let the energy from the chaotic space basin enter the star area further, the entire Thunder Firmament Star Area could have collapsed and disappeared, becoming part of the chaotic space basin. Shi Yang's heart felt so chilled. The battle of the immortal realm experts could destroy the entire star area. When the energy made a downpour from the space basin to attack Thunder Firmament Star Area, Shi Yang's nerves were shaking. He looked at De Carlos, his face grave. He had soon guessed De Carlos's identity. If an expert cultivating space power Upanishad at Dekalos level turned evil and interfered with the spatial structure by guiding the chaotic space basin into the galaxies, it would be the worst nightmare of every creature. No wonder why Dekalos had received such respect. Even when the God clan was at their peak of power, they didn't dare to provoke him. Shi Yang suddenly understood it. Experts cultivating space power Upanishad to the profound level became existences that frightened every force and star area. They could move between the spaces freely. They could turn a star area into nothing or make it a part of the turbulent space basin. Who wouldn't be frightened of such experts? Unless it was someone who could kill them. But who in this vast universe could kill Dekalos, an expert at second sky of immortal realm? Perhaps the God Lord could, but he had to recover his power first. Bloodthirsty could, but he was dead. For the time being, the warrior that could stop Dekalos hadn't existed yet. Fortunately, this man wasn't a villain. Luckily, this man was still a friend and not an enemy. Otherwise, no one could imagine the consequences. Shi Yang felt lucky. I don't want to get involved in the war between the God clan and the bloodthirsty force. I took Shi Yang to Thunder Firmament Star area to revive my old friend. Nothing more than that. Dekalos frowned and said to Carefree and Light, I saved him. He awakened Lei Di. I owned him once. Then, the space waves rippled through Dekalos's eyes. The space ripples were like a magical arm that smoothened the shattered area between Lei Di and Shi Yang. The marvelous outer space streamers looked as if they were squeezed and put back to the chaotic space basin. Everybody says that it's hard to fight experts cultivating space power Upanishad. If you can fight against me without running away, I can give you face this time. Light grinned brightly. He rose one finger and shot out a gold light. The gold light was shiny as if it was crystal and it reflected a lot of brilliant light beams weaving with each other. Each of those beams had a wisp of light's soul. That soul was gold. It looked like a brand new life. The light spirit. He used the soul as the foundation, the light as the conductor, and the light spirit. This was the deepest performance of the light power Upanishad. The gold light spirits were like countless clones of Heavenly King Light. They yelled and cheered. The creatures that Heavenly King Light had created from his incipient extent were the ultimate power of light. The gold light spirits represented the fountainhead of the light power Upanishad, which was the most touching performance of the power and the origin. All the light spirits swarmed towards Dekalos and wiggled to get through the barrier that Dekalos had set up, directly attacking his body. Dekalos wore a grave and heavy countenance. You've understood the principle of power. Your Upanishad now can create lives. You didn't waste the past 10,000 years, indeed. He closed his eyes all of a sudden. Dekalos's body twisted and so many new worlds arose on his arms, face, and chest, which were endlessly immense. They were the wonder that Dekalos had used the power Upanishad create. He had created spaces. After he had twisted his body, 9,900 worlds were created. Each of them was what Dekalos had comprehended of the space power Upanishad and connected to countless real worlds and the space basin. Each of those spaces could turn into a space passage with a flicker of his mind, which helped Dekalos cross different star areas easily. Looking at the endless worlds on Dekalos' body, Shi Yang was shaken. He could feel a flash of recognition. Each space that Dekalos created had opened him a new door to another higher level of space power Upanishad. Heavenly King Light's light spirit had approached Dekalos and entered his immense worlds, moving in different spaces. One after another, the worlds on Dekalos' body shattered into pieces. After each of the worlds was broken, it disappeared together with a gold light spirit. Every time it happened, Dekalos and Light showed they were suffering. The battle in such a level had gone beyond Shi Yang's understanding. Observing this battle, Shi Yang felt so touched. He knew that after observing this battle, his harvest would be unimaginable. Chapter 1310, The Same Gateway. Chapter 1310, The Same Gateway. The showdown of the immortal realm experts had generated an extremely formidable power that could destroy an entire star area. As soon as Dekalos and Heavenly King Light began to fight, Carefree and Lei Di stopped their battle. They then focused on Dekalos and light, which temporarily removed Shi Yang's pressure. But Shi Yang was still cautious. He had almost used all of his power to create layers of protection around his body in an attempt to resist the sudden attack at any minute. He knew his realm was much lower than Carefree's. As long as Carefree didn't mind about his status and ambush him, Shi Yang would be killed instantly. Thus, during the battle, he had secretly put up guard against Carefree. Heavenly King Light's light spirits had destroyed Dekalos's worlds one by one. Those spaces were Dekalos's Upanishad ability that could connect countless star areas directly. Dekalos could use them to move freely and leave no trace behind. He could appear and disappear like a mysterious ghost. However, those spaces were shattering, collapsing, and exploding altogether with the light spirits. Every time when the space and light spirit disappeared, Dekalos and light looked as if they were suffering pains. The shockwaves from their attack had created countless tornadoes in Thunder Firmament Star area as if doomsday coming. Those tornadoes expanded and they became a disaster for many life stars in Thunder Firmament Star area in the next 100 years or even 1,000 years. Those mortal people never knew that the phenomena they called disasters used to be the shockwaves from the battle between the immortal realm experts hundreds of years ago. It was their suffering. Shi Yang was shaken. He looked at Dekalos quietly. He knew that it would be his future. As they both cultivated space power Upanishad, Shi Yang knew that if he could reach second sky of immortal realm, he could have the same abilities as Dekalos. He could control the chaotic space basin. His soul consciousness could pierce through star areas and his body could move between space slits. Different spaces arose on Dekalos' body and the mysterious yet marvelous space energy had opened a new door for Shi Yang. The door leading to the profound gate of the space power Upanishad. Dekalos. All of a sudden, Heavenly King Light bellowed and touched his glabella to urge the soul altar. A magnificent, holy light that had many layers suddenly appeared above his head. It was the highest level of light's power Upanishad with the foundation and the essence of light power Upanishad. That massive light came from Heavenly King Light's incipient extent. It was the highest form of light and the soul of his power. As soon as that brilliant light appeared, Shi Yang and Ouyang Luo Shuang were dazzled because of their low realms. They couldn't see anything. Heaven Gate. Dekalos frowned and made many magical hand seals. Countless heaven gates appeared from his hand. Quickly, many illusions of that gate appeared. They didn't know where that heaven gate led to, but the aura diffused from that gate was wild and had the energy fluctuation of the origin. The great light fell and floated by the heaven gate. Many smaller light beams emitted, entered the heaven gate and disappeared into Dekalos's sea of consciousness. All of a sudden, the Heavenly King Light was perplexed. He looked at the heaven gate, his face changing quietly. Is it enough? It was the first time Dekalos showed his fierce face and bellowed, before the God Lord recovers, the God Clan is no threat to me. I'm always alone. If you anger me, I will let the chaotic space basin flow into ancient Godstar area. Then, I will see how lucky the 12 families of the God Clan are to escape this. Carefree and Light discolored in fright. They looked at Dekalos and pondered. Heavenly King Light retreated his magnificent light and his face became calm and natural. At the same time, Shi Yang and Ouyang Luo Shuang regained their sight. They could now see their surroundings. Everything was normal. Dekalos, can you ensure that you won't join the war between the God Clan and the Bloodthirsty Force? Light looked at Dekalos sternly. I told you. I'm here this time to awaken Lei Di. That kid helped my old friend awaken him. I owe him one. Thus, I have to protect him this time. Dekalos snorted and then said, Lei Di has established this Thunder Firmament Star area. The God Clan isn't allowed to trespass. Ming Hao is your junior, but he has followed Bloodthirsty Force. He used to cultivate space power Upanishad with you. Will you mind that bond? Asked Carefree all of a sudden. Hearing him, Shi Yang's eyes brightened. He couldn't help but look at Dekalos. Shi Yang suddenly remembered Bello, the chief of the Dark Shadow clan. Bello was at second sky of incipient god realm cultivating space power Upanishad. Ming Hao had controlled this expert by his soul control power Upanishad. He might have taught Bello this special power too. He was shocked as he just recognized that he was a little dumb. He should have recognized the relationship between DeCarlos and Ming Hao earlier. Since he has followed Bloodthirsty and become the leader of the Cortege of Eight, he is no longer my brother. DeCarlos's eyes were cold. My teacher's death is related to Bloodthirsty. As Ming Hao goes the same way as the enemy, I obviously won't support him. Carefree and Light looked at him, their faces hesitant. They all knew DeCarlos and Ming Hao's teacher. That expert used to be the most unpredictable character in this vast sea of stars. That man was the founder of Space Power Upanishad. During his whole life, he had accepted only two disciples, DeCarlos and Ming Hao. That year, Bloodthirsty had shown off his talent and become overbearing. In this universe, he had caused a lot of blood showers that made the experts join hands to punish him. DeCarlos's teacher was the most powerful expert. However, this expert was the most eye-catching rival of Bloodthirsty. Bloodthirsty had killed him eventually. Because of his death, Bloodthirsty had become the great title of the strongest warrior in this vast sea of stars. Years later, no one dared to challenge Bloodthirsty. After their teacher was killed, DeCarlos stayed in seclusion to cultivate. Ming Hao had sought Bloodthirsty to take revenge and turned out. The result was that Ming Hao didn't take his revenge, but became the leader of the 8 chiefs inexplicably. Bloodthirsty had given him the soul control power Upanishad and made his force the strongest force of the Bloodthirsty force. He had assisted Bloodthirsty to claim and control many forces and star areas discreetly. It was still a riddle how Bloodthirsty had persuaded Ming Hao. No one had discovered this secret yet. DeCarlos didn't know it, either. Perhaps only Ming Hao knew how and why he had become the leader of the 8 chiefs, deviating from his initial purpose of seeking Bloodthirsty to take revenge. All right, we'll give you face, Heavenly King Light pondered and then said resolutely, later on, the God Clan will not invade Thunder Firmament Star area. And that kiddo? We won't touch him this time then. I hope you were being sincere. I hope you will just stand and watch the battle between the God Clan and the Bloodthirsty force. He turned to Carefree, what do you think? Carefree's eyes were dark and glum. His eyes scanned Shiyang for a few seconds. He then chuckled, his only at incipient god realm. It's easy to kill him. Even though he can avoid us this time, no one can be sure if he can do it again. Exchanging him for DeCarlos staying aside from this war is worth it. DeCarlos, I hope you remember your teacher's death. Light snorted, turned around, and left. Only with one step, he had crossed billions of miles. He disappeared quickly. Let's go. Carefree smiled and left with Ouyang Luo Shuang. Ouyang Luo Shuang looked bright and cold, standing on the essence of the moon. She suddenly turned around to look at Shiyang. The complex and inexplicable emotions in her eyes touched Shiyang. Carefree and Light had come forcefully, attempted to kill Shiyang, and hurt DeCarlos. However, when they found that Lei Di revived and had reached second sky of Immortal Realm, they knew that they couldn't kill their targets this time. After the battle with DeCarlos, Heavenly King Light knew that DeCarlos's fighting competency wasn't less than his. He immediately got a new idea. DeCarlos knew what he wanted. He made himself resolutely clear that he wouldn't get involved in the war between the God Clan and the Bloodthirsty force. It was exactly what Light wanted. Thus, he had another plan. Although they couldn't kill Shiyang with their earth-shaking aura this time, they knew DeCarlos' real competence and Lei Di's resurrection. Also, they had forced DeCarlos to promise not to engage in the war. To Carefree and Light, this was all right. They could accept this outcome. Shiyang and Thunder Firmament Star area weren't as important as DeCarlos's attitude in their eyes. Oh, you are Ming Hao's brother, screamed Shiyang with an awkward face after Carefree and Light had left. DeCarlos snorted and looked at him coldly. You saved Lei Di. I saved you. We're good now. No debt anymore. If you meet Ming Hao, please tell him not to disturb me. Bloodthirsty killed your teacher. I thought you would stand on the God Clan's side to obliterate the Bloodthirsty force. I think it's weird that you put yourself in a neutral position. I understand why you don't support Bloodthirsty force. But why aren't you helping the God Clan either? Asked Shiyang. You're so annoying. DeCarlos had a fierce light in his eyes. He immediately created a space prison to confine Shi Yang. All of a sudden, a door appeared. DeCarlos pushed Shi Yang through the door. After Shi Yang opened his eyes, he found himself in Grace Mainland. Floating in the sea of clouds, Shi Yang lifted his head to look at the horizon and frowned. There were many vague ideas in his head. Ming Hao wanted to find Bloodthirsty to take revenge, but no one knew why he had become the leader of the 8 chiefs. Why did DeCarlos not choose to destroy the Bloodthirsty force to take revenge for his teacher? Why did he choose to stay neutral? What did he want after all? This time he could run away from Carefree because of DeCarlos. Was DeCarlos's operation this time because of the Thunder Dragon Lady or because of Ming Hao? He squeezed his brain to think, but he couldn't find a reason. He thought that the bond between DeCarlos and Ming Hao wasn't as simple as what Light and Carefree had mentioned. Perhaps the relationship and the grudge between them were over his imagination. A bow-like azure lightning flashed. Holy Beast Azure Dragon appeared out of nowhere and knitted his brows. Where is Lady? Lady is with DeCarlos. I guess they're still in Thunder Firmament Star area. He has awakened, screaming and yelling to tell me that he wanted to beat you for Heavenly Monster Tribe's chief position, Shi Yang said casually. Azure Dragon just laughed. I'm waiting for him. Chapter 1311, General Situation. Chapter 1311, General Situation. I heard that the war has begun. What's the situation? Shi Yang was in Grace Mainland. His soul checked around to see all the commotions in every small corner of the continent. He found many old monsters of Heavenly Monster Tribe weren't here, not even Xia Xinyang and Zi Yao. Recalling what DeCarlos had said, he realized something. He guessed the others had gone to join the war. Yeah, it's begun. Azure Dragon looked grave. He pondered for a while and then waved his hand. Follow me. His body flashed and he reappeared on Heavenly Monster Mountain Range. His hand wiped over an abandoned lake in the valley. It looked like a roll of a picture was slowly unveiled. The surrounding mountains suddenly became transparent and projected the dazzling lights shining on the lake. Some images that were from different star areas appeared on the lake. A war happened on those star areas. Many battleships were flying fast. The warriors were engaged in fierce battles. While Azure Dragon changed his power Upanishad, the moving images in the lake became clearer. Shi Yang could even see the faces of the warriors. He counted and found 12 sections showing images on the lake that were from the 12 star areas. The warriors of Heavenly Monster Tribe, Bloodthirsty Force, Thousand Fantasy Sect, Broken Hall, and Heaven River Temple were seen there too. And of course, their targets were the warriors of the God Clan. To be exact, they had aimed at the forces of the God Clan's 12 families. Shi Yang saw many familiar faces. Leona, Yangtian Emperor, Fei Lan, Ka Tuor, and Benny were there. He also saw Kang Yun of Heavenly Monster Tribe and his fellows with the experts of Thousand Fantasy Sect. Their opponents were all God Clan's experts. Many battleships were moving and firing. Different energies exploded. The soul altar shattered, turning into small light dots and scattering. The battles were so fierce. While Shi Yang was in Grace Mainland, the entire universe was engaging in a stormy war. Currently, they have battles in the 12 star areas. It's not at ancient God Star area of the God Clan. They are the star areas that the God Clan families have invaded or are about to invade. The 12 families of the God Clan are in a war. However, the Immortal Realm experts have a tacit understanding that they won't join the battles over there. Because with only one Immortal Realm expert, it is enough to change the general situation of an entire star area. Besides Imperial Dark Tribe, who remains neutral and indifferent, all the other clans and forces have joined this war. Xian he has called for our Heavenly Monster Tribe and the Immortal Demon Clan. Thousand Fantasy Sect, Broken Hall, Heaven River Temple, and even Prosaic Star Area, Hollow Fearsome Star Area, and many small forces are with the Bloodthirsty Force in this war. Ming Hao is indeed powerful. Although he has just revealed some forces he controls, it's already incredible. With a heavy complexion, Azure Dragon pointed at the moving images on the lake and explained to Shi Yang the current situation of the cosmos. Shi Yang's face turned dark and cold as he was observing the fierce battles in each star area. Ming Hao had cultivated soul control power Upanishad. In the past 10,000 years, he had discreetly enslaved the souls of many experts at a high position and levels like Mu Wei, Bai Yifeng, and Bello. In this vast universe, some forces that had disappeared for a long time suddenly reappeared in this war. The leaders of those forces had a blood mark on their forehead that terrified others. Taking Randolph, the chief of the Dark Force, for example, he was a member of the Charteris family of the God Clan. This time, Randolph appeared as the cult master of the Dark Nether God cult. Tens of thousands of years ago, the Dark Nether God cult used to be very powerful. However, their dark techniques were too evil. They had even sacrificed living beings to increase their own power. Many forces had joined hands to destroy this cult. Everybody thought that the Dark Nether God cult had been obliterated. However, this time, Randolph reappeared with many former disciples of the old Dark Nether God cult. They worshipped him as their god, and they were really extreme, as if they weren't afraid of death. There were many forces that were similar to the Dark Nether God cult. They should have extinguished a long time ago. However, when the bloodthirsty force and the God Clan announced a war, they bizarrely reappeared, and all of the leaders were Ming Hao's loyal subordinates. Those forces weren't weak. They were even stronger than the Wu family or the Jiao family. Their participation had frightened the entire Sea of Stars. Everybody knew this war had just begun. It meant that Ming Hao hadn't mobilized all of his forces yet. It meant that Ming Hao still had more powerful cards. This had weighed the warriors' hearts down. Ming Hao's fierceness was revealed. The warriors who knew about the soul control power Upanishad became cautious. They began to doubt their loyal subordinates who Ming Hao could summon in any minute. Who has gained the upper hand now? Shi Yang lifted his head and asked Azure Dragon. Azure Dragon wore a bitter face, but his voice calm. The God Clan has shown their outstanding power in every aspect. If the war continues this way, they will win eventually. Shi Yang was surprised. Why is that? You should come and see one of the battles there. Azure Dragon rose one finger and a section on the lake surface was zoomed close up. It was a melee between the God Clan, Wu family, the Jiao family, and Heavenly Monster Tribe. The members of the God Clan had a battleship made of the most precious and powerful materials. Each of them had excellent armor and weapons with the magical panacea. In every battle, they had cooperated closely and smoothly with their troopers and created excellent formations. The Wu family, the Jiao family, and Heavenly Monster Tribe couldn't have such powerful armor and supplies. In the past 10,000 years, the God Clan has continuously invaded the major star areas and enslaved them. They have robbed countless materials from other star areas to train their warriors. Their warriors have joined battles all the time. They are all experienced. At the same time, their armor, weapons, medicines, battleships, and even morale are higher and better than the others. If the bloodthirsty force didn't have more people, we would have been defeated right from the start. This period of 10,000 years has fattened the God Clan. With the aid from weapons and medicines, a King God Realm warrior of the God Clan can resist against 2 warriors on our side. Azure Dragon took a deep breath and then said, when they join to make the formation, their advantages become clearer. The invincible reputation of the God Clan wasn't just in vain. What Holy Beast Azure Dragon had said and the images Shi Yang had observed had doubled the pressure on his shoulder. He knew that the God Clan was powerful. But after they had actually engaged in the war, Shi Yang deeply understood how powerful they were. Although his side had many forces supported from everywhere, it couldn't gain the upper hand. It showed to what level the God Clan had reached after 10,000 years of accumulation. If we keep continuing this way, the God Clan will have a higher chance to win. Azure Dragon sighed again. The God Clan has the God Lord, the 4 Heavenly Kings, and Feng Ju of the Elders Committee. They are all at the Immortal Realm. The 12 families have so many incipient God Realm experts too. If the God Clan's reproduction wasn't that much weaker than Human Clan, they could have conquered this whole world in 10,000 years. Are you saying that we don't have any chance to win this war? Shi Yang knitted his brows. No. We still have you. You are the biggest variable, Azure Dragon's eyes shot out a fierce light. Your bloodthirsty successor. You can overturn the general picture. I believe you can do that. But Xian He, Ming Hao, and Frederick couldn't overturn it. How could I do that? Shi Yang was astounded. Because they aren't bloodthirsty heir. They can't, but you can, shouted Azure Dragon. I wish to hear the details, Shi Yang honestly asked for guidance. You understand Devouring Power Upanishad. It not only strengthens yourself but also increases the power of the warriors with the blood mark. In a battle, you can use the devouring power to take in energy from the enemies and transmit it to the bloodthirst's retinue. Your subordinate's energy will rocket instantly. You'll have super warriors with profound realms and abundant energy, which can make up for all their flaws, said Azure Dragon. That year, the God Clan and the forces around the Sea of Stars had attacked the bloodthirsty force. Their first target was Bloodthirsty. As long as he lived, the 8 chiefs could increase their power unceasingly. Once they got hurt, Bloodthirsty killed the god warriors to devour their energy and send it to the wounded warriors to heal them rapidly. It was the most terrifying feature of the bloodthirsty force. God-perishing land of the God Clan took reference from the Devouring Power Upanishad. It developed similar characteristics as the Devouring Power Upanishad. They used the dark prison demonic flower to absorb the blood and flesh from victims to create a place to heal the god warriors. Compared to the real Devouring Power Upanishad, the God-perishing land isn't really sufficient. If you can master the Devouring Power Upanishad, you can definitely change the situation. Azure Dragon understood the special abilities of the bloodthirsty force. Shi Yang got it immediately after listening to Azure Dragon. He remembered that he had used the Devouring Power Upanishad to pour the energy into Fei Lan, Leona, and Ka Tuor through the mark on their forehead. He recognized that Azure Dragon's suggestion was subtle and profound. It was true. Xian He, Ming Hao, and Frederick couldn't change this overall situation. But he could. It was because he was the bloodthirsty force's master's successor. He used Devouring Power Upanishad. Are you sure that the Immortal Realm expert won't join the war for now? He was startled all of a sudden. It's a tacit agreement, Azure Dragon nodded. If the God Clan doesn't want to destroy many star areas, they will follow this agreement. It won't change anytime soon at least. Shi Yang grinned and asked, where's the closest battlefield? Fiery Rain Star area. Azure Dragon understood him. They're in a dangerous situation. If you go there and help them win the battle, the warriors of Fiery Rainstar area will have their power rocket because of you. You can make your debut there. Who has joined that battlefield? Asked Shi Yang. Benny and Ka Tuor with the warriors of Agate Star area. You should start to change the situation of this war from there, answered Azure Dragon. Shi Yang nodded and then turned away. Right at this moment, Azure Dragon called after him. Take Ghost Hunter with you. I've restricted him for a long time. He should go out and get some fresh air. Okay. Chapter 1312, The Master Arrives. Chapter 1312, The Master Arrives. Fiery Rainstar area. The flaming meteors congregated like a fiery shower in a corner of the vast sea of stars where 6 life stars formed a hexagon. This place was called Hexagonal Starland. It was also the center of Fiery Rainstar area. Hexagonal Starland had 6 life stars that respectively belonged to the 6 strongest forces of Fiery Rainstar area. Currently, the 6 forces had joined hands and called themselves God-Defending Union, a union to defend the God Clan. At this moment, the 6 life stars of Hexagonal Starland were connected to each other by brilliant starlight bands. Many battleships were anchored around the place. Those battleships had different shapes and were made of different materials like iron, bone, or even wood. Roughly counting, there were dozens of thousands of battleships carrying warriors from different races and forces. The God-Defending Union had 6 big forces of Fiery Rainstar area as core members and many other smaller forces around Fiery Rainstar area. Although they had formed an extraordinary force, they were always in a dangerous situation in the battle with the Breckelfeld family and the Austin family of the God Clan. As soon as the bloodthirsty force had declared war against the God Clan, Fiery Rainstar area immediately became one of the battlefields because the two big families, Breckelfeld and Austin of the God Clan, had almost conquered Fiery Rainstar area. Xian He and Frederick had always watched Fiery Rainstar area. As soon as the war burst out, they had arranged Benny, Ka Tuor, and the warriors of the bloodthirsty force with the 8 main power Upanishads to come here to help the God-defending Union resist the God Clan. However, they were in a dangerous situation. Many life stars in this star area had fallen one after another. Begrudgingly, they had to retreat to hexagonal starland. Since the 6 life stars here had layers of barriers and restrictions, if the God Clan's battleships took risks and barged in, they would have to pay a bloody price. At this moment, the experts of the Breckelfeld family and the Austin family were on their battleships. They surrounded hexagonal starland. They were waiting for the super-powerful weapon of their family to break the defense of hexagonal starland to knock this Fiery Rainstar area down first. This battle would mark that this star area would still be conquered even after bloodthirsty force had interfered with their invasion. After they won this battle, it would cheer up their warriors' morale. It would also encourage the battles of the 12 families in different star areas. Back angle star, hexagonal starland. The flattened peak of an imposing mountain had a grand, luxurious palace. Some excellent battleships were anchored there. Black Angle Star was the most important life star in hexagonal starland. It was the current headquarters of the God-defending Union. People could observe the entire area of Black Angle Star from the peak of this massive black mountain. This life star had pitch-black soil, countless dark abysses, and lakes and ponds with toxic miasma hovering. The entire sky was dreary and silent. However, it was strange that this planet with harsh conditions had extremely thick earth and heaven energy. The black soil, lakes, and abysses allowed for the growth of a lot of herbs and rare, precious crystals. At this moment, Xiao Yan and Yu Shan were standing behind an old woman by a massive rock atop the black mountain, their faces stern and heavy. The old, wrinkled woman had high spirits as the terrifying light sparkled in her eyes. She held a snake-headed staff, frowning as she was looking far ahead and sighing. Couldn't the bloodthirsty force send more warriors? With only you guys here, I'm afraid we can't stop the God Clan. She turned around and looked at Benny, Ka Tuor, and Blood Devil with hope. This time, besides Benny, Ka Tuor, and Blood Devil, there were several hundred warriors cultivating the 8 great power Upanishad coming to Fiery Rainstar area. However, most of them were at original God Realm or ethereal God Realm. Blood Devil who commanded them was at 3rd sky of incipient God Realm. Thus, only he was the real expert here. And of course, as Blood Devil was the overlord of the Demon Clan in Agate Star area and Agate Star area was adjacent to Fiery Rainstar area, after Blood Devil had arrived, Gut and Bath of the Monster Clan followed him. Ming Hao had secretly set up a space teleport formation to deliver Lin Xin and Zi Yarrow of the Divine Light, Feng Han and Xia Xinyang of Fighting League to hexagonal starland too. During this time, the combined forces of Agate Star area and Fiery Rainstar area had been defeated continuously by the Breckelfeld family and the Austin family. Begrudgingly, they could only retreat to hexagonal starland as their last resort. With many layers of barriers and restrictions set up dozens of thousands of years in hexagonal starland, the God Clan couldn't take risks to attack them. This old woman was the current hegemon of the God-defending Union and the head of the star area elected by the forces of the Union. As the recent situation was so tense, she became restless. She hoped that Blood Devil could contact the bloodthirsty force to send more experts to help Fiery Rainstar area overcome this struggle. In this vast universe, the war has burst out in all 12 star areas. The warriors of our force have been sent to 12 different star areas. We've used most of our force. Blood Devil frowned and shook his head. If we win the battles in different star areas, we can rearrange the force. Otherwise, I'm afraid we don't have more reinforcements. Yunnan sighed as she listened to him. She looked at the sea of stars out there and winced. She was Yu Shan's father's lover. She had 3rd sky of incipient God realm and cultivated fire power Upanishad. She was the expert with the most excellent and profound realm in Fiery Rainstar area. Although she had the same realm with Blood Devil, she didn't look positive. It was because the Breckelfeld family and the Austin family had also sent their best warriors to this battle. They heard that the God Clan had even sent an expert at the false immortal realm who would attack her directly. Yunnan and Blood Devil hadn't joined the previous battles. However, they still felt the aura of the expert inside the enemy's battleships. The aura was like an invisible threat that was purposely shown to prevent Yunnan and Blood Devil from taking rash actions. Yunnan had hoped that Bloodthirsty Force would send some expert at the false immortal realm or some more incipient God realm experts at Blood Devil's level. Actually, the old monsters of Heavenly Monster Tribe suited her standards. Unfortunately, Azure Dragon had sent them to some other star areas. Because the situation over there was much more dangerous and fierce than in Fiery Rainstar area, they needed more experts to guard. They are waiting for the big weapon of the God Clan. I know they have something that can break all kinds of barriers. The Breckelfelds and the Austins wouldn't act rashly. I think they're waiting for that weapon. When that happens, we won't be able to run away anymore, Yunnan sighed. She suddenly turned to Yushan, contemplated, and then advised. When the defensive barriers of hexagonal Starland are broken, you have to take Xian Fei and the juniors to escape through the space teleport formation. Take them to the tsunami star to the shelter. We must remain our bloodline. Yushan's eyes showed shattered pieces of light. She shook her head and lowered her voice. Xian Fei can leave, but I can't. It's my responsibility. I'm not leaving, either. Xian Fei wiped her mouth, straightened her quivering body, and cried. Yunnan snorted and then said, "It's not the right time for your pouting. Xiao Yan, come to check the teleport formation. We have to check it every day to ensure that it can work properly." "I got it," Xiao Yan bowed. He disappeared after a flash. However, after 10 seconds, Xiao Yan came back. With an odd countenance, he said, "The teleport formation is glowing. Someone is trying to come here. Should we open it to receive them?" Hearing him, people then wore strange faces. They were perplexed because they couldn't guess who was coming. "Is it your people coming?" Yunnan looked at Blood Devil. Blood Devil shook his head and said, "No. I didn't receive any confirmation from the superior." Yunnan discolored all of a sudden. It could be the God Clan. Everybody was frightened. "Go there and check." Bloodthirsty Force wore a heavy face. He then turned into a bloodlight and disappeared. After several minutes, they came to another area of the mountain and stood by a hexagonal jade platform. The light beams weaved over the jade platform created a net. The nodes of this net were like brilliant stars that had colors changing continuously and dazzled people. Each side of this hexagonal formation had a hand-sized jade that was robustly emitting light with a unique energy. They gathered by the jade platform looking at the jade pieces and the mysterious symbols on them. Jar Duo screamed, "It's from Agate Star area." Agate Star area. Yunnan hissed then relaxed. "Is there any other expert in your Agate Star area? Who is coming, you think?" Blood Devil looked at his teammates, Barth and Gut of the Monster Clan, Lin Shin of the Divine Light, Fenghan of the Fighting League, Jar Duo of Potion and Tool Pavilion, and even Yang Kai of the Fire Clan and Bing Jie of the Ice Clan. They all came to help Fiery Rainstar area resist against the God Clan. After the bloody battle in Agate Star area, the warriors of the forces in Agate Star area had recognized that if the God Clan wasn't obliterated, they would never live in peace. When the God Clan had invaded them for the first time, Yushan had come to refine the departed spirit jellyfish that had given Agate Star area the first moments of peace. Fiery Rainstar area and Agate Star area were neighbors, so it wasn't different to get to one of them even if they had blocked the space passage connecting those two star areas. If the God Clan could conquer Fiery Rainstar area, Agate Star area would never be able to live in peace. They understood that when the twig bent, the tree inclined. Thus, Yang Kai and Bing Jie had come here proactively to help. Blood Devil's line of sight raked over his fellows then said, "I don't think so. If they come from the Agate Star area, I think it will be no problem. And just let them get through to see who they are," suggested Xiao Yan. Yunnan nodded in agreement. Then, they lifted up the seal to welcome someone using the teleport formation to come here. Instantly, the radiant halos expanded from the formation. An impatient voice arose altogether. Why it took you so long to open the door? People were shocked hearing the voice. Shiyang, Master, Kiddo. For the time being, the experts from the Agate Star area couldn't help but laugh even though they hadn't seen him yet. The dark clouds shadowing their hearts vanished instantly. They were all cheered up. Chapter 13:13. Come to the front line with me. Chapter 13:13. Come to the front line with me. Yunan's dark grey eyes sparkled as she asked, Bloodthirsty Forces Master? Xiao Yan, Yu Shan, and Xian Fei looked baffled when they saw Shiyang walking out of the teleport formation. They couldn't believe it. Blood Devil, Lin Xin, and Feng Han exhaled in relief. They smiled sincerely. Long time no see, Shiyang chuckled, nodded to Xiao Yan, Yu Shan, and Xian Fei, and asked, How is the current situation? Are you really the new master of Bloodthirsty Force? Yunnan looked skeptical. Many members of the God-defending Union were also perplexed as they observed Shiyang. Why did the new master of the Bloodthirsty Force have such a low realm? He was not even stronger than Blood Devil. Shiyang was at second sky of incipient God realm. In their eyes, it wasn't enough to change the situation of Fiery Rainstar area. Ghost Hunter. The light on the teleport formation bloomed again. Jiu couldn't help but shout. Her beautiful eyes twinkled. Barth and Gut were bewildered, but their emotions turned to fear as they saw Ghost Hunter. After Heavenly Monster Tribe had gone to Agate Star area and then the Heavenly Monster Mountain Range on Grace Mainland, Azure Dragon of Heavenly Monster Tribe had taken Ghost Hunter away. Gut hadn't met him for a long time. Today, seeing that Ghost Hunter had reached the intermediate phase of level 13, he was frightened. Currently, Ghost Hunter's realm and power were equal to his. With his understanding of Ghost Hunter's power, he knew that he couldn't defeat him if they fought. The others didn't know how strong Ghost Hunter was, but Gut had experienced that better than anyone else. He knew how fierce Ghost Hunter could be when he turned wild. He had seen it with his own eyes. After that time, he had tried his best to recruit Ghost Hunter and give him power with responsibility. He wanted to train Ghost Hunter to be the next patriarch of Brutal Dragon Tribe. However, Ghost Hunter's future could be wider and brighter than that. Brutal Dragon Tribe couldn't hold him back. They knew it from the way Holy Ancestor Azure Dragon had trained him. Ghost Hunter was like a cold blade standing by Shiyang. The intimidating aura or energy emitted from him wasn't less than Shiyang. This kind of cold and callous makings and bloodthirsty heartlessness in his bones had shown his intimidation pretty well. Yunnan and the warriors of the God-defending Union felt scared and cold instinctively when they looked at him. They felt like they were facing a wild beast from a primal time. This feeling made they discreetly frightened. When they looked at Ghost Hunter, they couldn't help but wear cautious looks. At the same time, Shiyang didn't give them a clear pressure. Without the title of the Bloodthirsty Forces Master, people wouldn't even notice him. They didn't know that Shiyang's vision and knowledge had improved a lot after witnessing the battle between Heavenly King Light and Dekalos in Thunder Firmament Star area. His cognition of power Upanishads had reached a new height. He could conceal the rough and evil aura from his body easily. Shiyang today had a normal and calm aura when he purposely concealed his power. Ghost Hunter still needed to practice a lot to reach his level. As the experts of Fiery Rainstar area could feel Ghost Hunter's excellent intimidation, they admired and respected him a lot. However, they soon found out that after Ghost Hunter appeared with his coolness that was chilled to the bone and his arrogance, he didn't look at the others aside from giving a nod to Gut of Brutal Dragon Tribe. He didn't even throw Gumo a glance. He just stood upright behind Shiyang like an ice sculpture. His aura scared the others away. It made Yunnan surprised. She observed Shiyang. Her knowledge wasn't normal. From Ghost Hunter's position, she knew that Ghost Hunter let Shiyang control everything. Yunnan could see that the new master of the Bloodthirsty Force now had experts guarding him. What's the situation now? Shiyang wasn't patient as he hissed. Yu Shan made a step forward and said, It's not good at all. The Breckelfeld family and the Austin family have damaged us poorly in the recent battles. Right now, We're trying our best to defend hexagonal starland. The Breckelfelds and the Austens are waiting for a brutal weapon that can break the layers of barriers and restrictions outside hexagonal starland. I'm afraid we shouldn't fight here. Shi Yang squinted and looked at the dark area ahead of them. We must get out of hexagonal starland and fight the Breckelfeld family and the Austen family. Defending here won't bring you victory. Blood Devil, Xia Xinyang, and the warriors from Agate Star area looked confused, but they didn't say anything. They didn't think it was an appropriate method. They had fought the God Clan several times and each ended with their defeat. They knew how terrifying the God Clan was. Otherwise, they didn't have to defend hexagonal starland as their last resort. However, they knew Shi Yang could create miracles. Thus, even though they didn't agree with him, they said nothing. Quite the contrary, the warriors of the God-defending Union didn't have the same idea. An expert cultivated earth power Upanishad at second sky of incipient God realm looked a little angry as he hissed, "If we get out there to fight, we'll die in vain. You don't know how strong the God Clan is." What he said was also what the experts of the God-defending Union wanted to say. Recently, they had experienced a lot of bitter defeats from the God Clan. Although he was discontented, he had restrained his moods because Shi Yang was the new master of the bloodthirsty force. He represented the force with the strongest fighting competence in this vast universe. He didn't show a lot of his dissatisfaction. Although I haven't fought against the God Clan many times, my opponents were all real experts of the God Clan. Shi Yang frowned and didn't want to talk much. He looked at the band of stars from a distance and urged his power Upanishad. The void in front of them suddenly moved. A spiral space passage was created in front of Shi Yang at a speed that naked eyes could observe. In the next moment, it was through. At his second sky of incipient God realm and with the attainment of his space power Upanishad, although Shi Yang couldn't break the star area barrier with only his thoughts to pierce through different star areas, it was easy to create a space bridge to get to the other areas within a star area. After the space passage was created, Shi Yang turned around and looked at the experts of Agate Star area. "Come to the front line with me." Then, he didn't wait for Fiery Rain Star area's experts to say more. He just dashed away. Blood Devil, Feng Han, Lin Xin, Xia Xinyang, Bath, Gut, and even Yang Kai, Bingju didn't protest. They commanded their warriors instantaneously. Thus, many warriors of Fiery Rain Star area gawked at the experts moving away through the space passage. They left hexagonal starland where they had defended for a long time and fearlessly headed towards the thick defense of the Breckelfeld family and the Austen family. Oh! Yunnan was bewildered and said nothing. She didn't know what to do. He can create miracles. As he's the master of the bloodthirsty force, his intimidation isn't something we can guess. Xiao Yan contemplated for a few seconds and then suggested sincerely to Yunnan. Follow him. He's not an impulsive person. I'm sure he has plans and calculations. Auntie, we can't treat this man normally, Yu Shan also said. Yunnan and the warriors of Fiery Rain Star area knitted their brows and hesitated. Once they got out of hexagonal starland, they would immediately engage in a confrontation with the God Clan that no one could ensure if they could return alive. They used the destiny of Fiery Rain Star area to bet this time. Winning this battle, they would win. If they lost, their merit of defending this hexagonal starland would be in vain. Yunnan didn't dare to make a rash decision. She looked at the crowd and asked, "What do you think?" The leaders of the other forces wore grave faces. They didn't dare to say anything because they didn't dare to use the future of the star area to bet. "Anyway, we have to send someone there. You guys, think about it more." Seeing that the space passage about to close, Yu Shan became determined. She suddenly turned into a fire beam and shot through the passage. "Teacher," Xian Fei called, then jumped into the passage. Then, Xiao Yan and many warriors of Fiery Rain Star area who worked with Benny quickly got through the space passage and disappeared without a concern for their leaders' opinions. Those people used to train in Agate Star area. Receiving Benny's dedicated training, they had become the most powerful and elite force of Fiery Rain Star area. They could fight the God Clan, indeed. Thus, they represented the future of Fiery Rain Star area. After many bloody battles, they had considered Benny as their supreme commander. They supported him wholeheartedly and swore to sacrifice their lives for Benny. Seeing them jump into the space passage, Yunnan paled and shouted, "All the battleships engage in this battle. Get out of hexagonal starland. We must join this battle." Damn. The others didn't want to go. However, hearing Yunnan, they knew that they didn't have another choice. They then ordered their subordinates, all the battleships and war chariots, gather with Agate Star Area's warriors. We must win this battle or we all will die. For the time being, the shining metal battleships were like dragons that stormed out of the abyss and pierced through the barriers of hexagonal starland. They were heading to the immense sea of stars out there. Outside hexagonal starland, Shi Yang was standing on a dark blue, cold meteorite. In front of him were several thousand hidden god vessels of the god clan. These kinds of hidden god vessels were made of an invisible wood. They could become invisible while moving in outer space. However, it wasn't completely invisible. They just troubled people's sights and soul consciousness from a far distance. The god clan used the hidden god vessels to attack many star areas. Usually, they could produce great results because they could damage the enemy badly before the enemy could recognize them. However, the invisible ability of those battleships was ineffective in front of Shi Yang. In Thunder Firmament Star Area, his life and body sublimated. He could reflect the entire star area in his brain to observe the structure of that star area. Just like that, when he entered Fiery Rain Star Area, he had reflected Fiery Rain Star Area in his brain to see every corner of this star area as if he was its master. This feeling was really marvelous, but Shi Yang couldn't tell if it was the development of his star or space power Upanishad. However, he had the feeling that he was the real master of this star area. The arrangements of the god clan in Thunder Firmament Star Area appeared in his head like the drawings. The hidden god vessels of the god clan are in front of us. They are the god clan's later preparation. They've planned to widen the space passage here and set up their traps. After they've attacked hexagonal starland, they were going to lure the forces of Fiery Rain Star Area to this area. Shi Yang wore a stern face. That area has many natural tornadoes with full force. If we get there, those natural tornadoes that are created in outer space will activate and explode the hidden god vessels anchored nearby. They will be fluttered. When they are in chaos, we will attack them suddenly. Everybody was shocked and looked at him disbelieving. Benny asked, "Master, I'm amazed to see how you can be so thoughtful and tactful. How could you do that?" It was what the others also wanted to ask too. It's hard to say clearly. But right when I got to Fiery Rain Star Area, I could see all the big commotions in the star area, said Shi Yang absent-mindedly. Everybody was frightened. Chapter 1314, Bite and Nibble. Chapter 1314, Bite and Nibble. Shi Yang's words surprised people a lot. How magical was he when he could draw the entire star area map in his head and recognize all the big commotions there right when he took the first step and entered this place? Shi Yang was also amazed by his divine ability. As his realm was increasing, his star and space power Upanishads tended to merge. The vague cooperation between two powers Upanishads had given him a new cognition and gifted him a new divine ability. If the warriors cultivated many power Upanishads at the same time, it would be pretty hard to break through the profound realm and increase their powers quickly. It happened like that to every warrior. If the incipient God Realm expert wanted to break through to the new realm, all of his power Upanishads had to improve altogether. Moreover, the energy required to break through was several times larger than when an expert cultivated only one power Upanishad. At this realm, an incipient God Realm expert needed hundreds of years or even thousands of years to break to the next level, even if he cultivated only one power Upanishad. Those with many different power Upanishads needed to put a lot of effort, much more than others. How tough was it? Directly, it led to the fact that the experts cultivating many power Upanishads at the same time could hardly break through again after they had reached incipient God Realm. The majority of experts understood this big flaw, thus, they had chosen to cultivate only one type of power Upanishad. They rather immersed themselves in only one power to increase their realms during this eternal time. The The sort of warrior like Shi Yang who had cultivated space, star, death and life, and devouring power Upanishads, and could break through quickly was the most marvelous kind of mutant in this world. It was absolutely a miracle. There was a rumor in this vast cosmos saying that the warrior who had fused with the ancient continent's origin could understand the meanings of power Upanishads to the ultimate level. They could even move freely in the fountainhead of power Upanishads. Only 4 of them existed in each era because there were only 4 ancient continents. The 4 warriors with the origin of the ancient continents could advance faster than ordinary warriors in understanding the power Upanishads. They could decode the secrets of their power Upanishads easily. This sort of warriors was so lucky if they cultivated many power Upanishads at the same time because they wouldn't meet the obstacles of comprehending their powers. The only thing they needed to worry about was to accumulate God power. With many power Upanishads, it required more God power for each breakthrough, much more than that of ordinary warriors. After they reached incipient God realm, even though they could use divine crystals and precious earth and heaven products to fill up their God power, they still needed a long, long time. There was almost no shortcut in this. However, the devouring power Upanishad was the official shortcut that the experts in this vast sea of stars acknowledged. The devouring power Upanishad was worshipped as the first evil technique because it helped warriors swallow power from others to benefit its user. That way, the warrior could accumulate his God power rapidly and reach the limit to break through quickly. The devouring power Upanishad could use all kinds of energy. Whether it was the power of the flesh body, God power, or soul power, as long as it was energy, this power Upanishad could take it all. It could even gather and devour the abilities of other power Upanishad. It could turn abilities from others into the user's abilities and they could keep them in their inner world or soul altar. This kind of devouring technique was a violation of nature's principles. Bloodthirsty had used this technique to make his bloody debut to become the overbearing lord of the universe. It showed the intimidation of this dark technique. As he had the evil technique of devouring, he could break through faster than the warriors cultivating only one power Upanishad even if he had the star, space, death and life power Upanishads altogether. All the merits went for the devouring power Upanishad. The warriors cultivating many power Upanishads at the same time could break through slowly, but they always gained the upper hand in the battle with the warriors at the same realm. This situation became clearer with more profound realms. The warriors with many powers Upanishads could make their different powers fuse together to create incredible abilities. Normal warriors couldn't understand such magnificent abilities when different power Upanishads fused together, so they couldn't improvise sufficiently. Today, as soon as Shi Yang had entered this star area, he immediately had an incredible feeling as if he was the owner of this star area. His soul consciousness could extend like massive, long tentacles to check even the farthest corners of this place. It was the first miracle he had when he first fused the star and space power Upanishads. As his realm increased, this ability was going to become more astounding. Although Dekalos was at second sky of immortal realm, since he had cultivated only space power Upanishad, he couldn't get a clearer vision than Shi Yang did to the general situation of a galaxy. This kind of magical ability only happened to the warriors cultivating different power Upanishads at the same time. Since they had chosen a rough path, they had to pay with more efforts. It was how the heavenly might treated them fairly. They had to pay more than the others so they could earn more. They would receive more abilities after their power Upanishads had fused with each other. However, this marvelous ability was different at varying levels of compatibility. Space and star power Upanishads were the top magical power Upanishads in this vast universe. Originally, these two power Upanishads could fuse with each other subtly, and once they combined with each other, the abilities generated could shake the entire cosmos. There are around 500 hidden god vessels and 20,000 warriors at King God realm and above. The hidden god vessels scattered around, and between them are the natural stormy magnetic fields that are pretty fierce. Squinting, Shi Yang's soul consciousness extended to survey the area like invisible tentacles. He could tell the others the situation clearly. The dark void ahead of us is the natural border outside hexagonal starland. It's an abyss filled with dangers of the sea of stars. It has shattered, rapid meteors, cosmic dust, strong storms, and icicles. Even our Fiery Rainstar area's warriors don't come here often to survey the area. Yu Shan walked to the front. She was wearing a tight, long green robe that revealed her snow-white shoulders and her deep cleavage. She didn't look like she came to engage in a battle. She looked like she prepared to be in a ball. However, she wore a grave complexion and looked at the dark area ahead of them. It's beyond my estimation that the God clan dares to choose that area to ambush. The one who made this decision should be rough and tough. I dare say that without your reminder, when the God clan uses their super weapon to break the barriers of hexagonal Starland, we will choose this area to break their siege. We know this place is a natural death trap, but it will make the God clan pay a bloody price if they come after us. We thought so and we will do so. Yu Shan's crescent moon-like eyes showed fear. We could never estimate that the hidden god vessels would ambush there. If it happens, we will all be killed. Xiao Yan and Xian Fei arrived with Fiery Rainstar area's warriors led by Benny. Listening to Yu Shan, they felt shivers sent down their spines as if they were seeing that vision where the hidden god vessels showed their fangs and tore them apart. As they haven't prepared well, we will attack them right now. Of course, we're not the ones who have to pay a bloody price, said Shi Yang coldly. Blood Devil and the warriors from Agate Star area believed Shi Yang without any condition. They immediately ordered their troopers into positions and prepared for the coming raid. They were warriors of the Monster Clan and Demon Clan whom Leona used to train. They were all calm and cold, brutal lights sparkling in their eyes. Their bearings and their intimidation were even scarier than the warriors Benny had trained. While the other troops were still arranging their positions, they had finished. Their divine weapons and armor had fused with their fierce auras. Using the soul consciousness to sense, the others would find that their savage auras could combine into one flow in their position like a massive mouth of a ferocious beast that was ready to swallow all things. It was the fighting spirit of the battle. All of a sudden, a cold figure like an icicle appeared on the front of the position Leona had trained like a sharp spear. That was Ghost Hunter. He used to be the leader of a Monster Clan's troop. Leona had taught him military tactics. Today, as he had reached the immediate phase of level 13, he was more savage. Bite and nibble. Ghost Hunter bellowed. Just like a sharp weapon that could break anything, he was the vanguard attacking the dark void ahead. The troop behind him was guided by his ruthless aura. They became stirred up immediately and they followed him like the body of a massive serpent with an open mouth that could squeeze and swallow all creatures in this world. Horn of Destruction. At the same time, Benny thundered and the troops he had trained had positioned into a dragon horn formation. The sharp aura coming out from their heads gathered into a massive flow that was the top of the dragon horn and thrust forward. Ghost Hunter and Benny led two troops and stormed forward. Instantaneously, Blood Devil, Feng Han, Lin Xin, Yang Kai, and Bing Jie also commanded their warriors. Xiao Yan, Yu Shan, and the others also released their marvelous abilities that rolled like a fierce, turbulent flood current aimed at the dark abyss in front of them fearlessly. The Dark Void. A hidden god vessel was hovering between the clusters of white clouds. Many warriors of the god clan on the ship were releasing their ethereal extent to pull those clouds. Those clusters of white-grey clouds were called puzzled spirit lead clouds, and they were a very dangerous sort of cloud in this universe. The puzzled spirit lead clouds had a terrifying effect. It could dissolve the soul consciousness. When the warriors engaged in a battle, they needed to use their soul consciousness to target and lock the enemy's soul altars and locations. The soul consciousness would vanish as soon as it touched this kind of cloud. When a warrior accidentally fell into the clusters of puzzled spirit lead cloud, his immense sea of consciousness soon lost all wisps of soul consciousness left. It led to the fracture of the soul altar, even if the warrior was a profound expert. The sea of consciousness was the basic foundation of the soul altar that nurtured the soul. When the sea of consciousness dried, the soul altar shattered altogether. Thus, the puzzled spirit lead cloud was really terrifying. At this moment, the members of the God clan didn't use their soul consciousness. They had used the God power to move the clusters of clouds and put them to locations that they had set up beforehand. They were preparing a surprising gift to the warriors of Fiery Rainstar area. Since this area was the death trap of Fiery Rainstar area, The warriors of this star area rarely came here. Anyway, the God clan was different. While invading many star areas, they had a unique understanding of the perilous abyss. They were good at turning death traps to their good lands and turning them into deadly challenges they could control. Today, they did the same. They were quietly changing this abyss by adding more terrifying items like puzzled spirit lead clouds. They were going to use these things to attack the warriors of Fiery Rainstar area who were lured to this area. However, something unexpected was about to happen this time. Chapter 13:15, Tough Encounter. Chapter 13:15, Tough Encounter. Wedderson was a tall and handsome expert wearing a set of shining gold armor while standing on the bowsprit of a hidden god vessel. He wasn't a pure god warrior. He was the offspring of a warrior of the Breckerfeld family and a woman from a primitive tribe. That year, his father was banished to a rural, isolated star area. The man tribe there only cultivated the body and they didn't know how to use higher forms of energy. The expert of the god clan was wounded while being banished. A woman of that rural tribe had saved him. No one knew why and how he had a romantic relationship with that woman. After the expert had recovered, he conquered that galaxy and returned to the Breckerfeld family. Years after he had left, the woman gave birth to Wedderson. As he had the god clan's bloodline, he had thrived fast in that star area. His power and realm had advanced rapidly. His mother saw his supernatural power, so she told him to go to ancient Godstar area to find his father. Wedderson followed his mother's advice to go to the Breckerfeld family in ancient Godstar area. Unfortunately, his father was wounded severely in a war in another star area. He was held in the god-perishing land to recover, but he hadn't woken up yet. Since Wedderson wasn't a pureblood, the Breckerfeld didn't acknowledge him and they denied to put his name in the family records. However, Wedderson's competence wasn't bad. The Breckerfeld family didn't want to waste such a talent like him, so they made him a fighting slave to do dangerous things. The fighting slaves like him were just sacrificing pawns of the god clan. However, Wedderson had been tough enough to survive each of the bloody battles. People thought he would die, but his power continued to increase. After 1,000 years, he had reached second sky of incipient god realm. When this expert urged the divine blood of the god clan and the blood of his man tribe, he had become terrifyingly savage. Finally, the current chief of the Breckerfeld Thornton had to look at this mixed-blood warrior. Still, his name wasn't written in their family records. The chief had given him the power to command the hidden god vessels of the family. In the past several years, Wedderson had made a lot of merits, which made Thornton appreciate him more. This time, the heavy responsibility of crushing Fiery Rainstar area Win 1 strike was placed on Wedderson's shoulders. "Sir, after 9 days, we can level this abyss death trap. It'll become our crucial base. If they rashly storm over, they will be crushed." A warrior of the god clan came to Wedderson and reported respectfully. Although his voice was respectful, his eyes concealed extreme disdain. Because he was a pureblood god warrior, he had this natural arrogance. Although Wedderson's realm was higher than his and he was the commander of the hidden god vessels, just like many other warriors here, he had always scorned his leader. A mixed blood from the man tribe was dirty to them. If Wedderson's realm wasn't high and he didn't have value on the battlefields, the god warriors here believed that Thornton would have ditched him earlier. Wedderson had a beefy body and a pair of white-grey eyes that were the vestige of his man blood. He coldly looked at the reporter, snorted inwardly and then said, "Watch carefully. It's the most crucial moment. If someone barges in now before we finish our settings here, we'll be the ones bearing a loss." He wasn't a fool. From the eyes of those god troopers, he could see the concealed, deep disdain they had for him. This kind of look was like an ambushing arrow that had irritated him a lot. He couldn't do anything. He knew that the entire star area where he was born belonged to the Breckerfeld family. If he dared to rebel, not only would he be killed but his home planet, his mother, and the man warriors who had worshipped him as their king were also going to be killed. His life and his everything was bound by the Breckerfeld family. He didn't have the power to struggle and he couldn't struggle. "Sir, something happened. We're under attack." Suddenly, a sharp scream came to him from afar. Instantly, All the god warriors on the hidden god vessels got shocked. Recently, they were using a special technique of the god clan to change the storm energy and make them one flow of the most fearful magnetic field flood. They were in the most critical moment. If they stopped to counter the attack, they would receive backfire from the natural force. If they didn't stop their work, they would still face fatal consequences when the opponents attacked them. The others had found the opportunity when the god clan was most vulnerable to attack them. The god warriors discolored in fright. When Wedison heard the screams, his blood boiled up. The brute nature of his man tribe arose. It was like a thirst for fighting, as if only an endless fight could ease his turbulent, anxious heart. "Prepare to engage in the battle," Wedison shouted. His voice was like a ferocious beast roaring, echoing through the dark abyss. He was suddenly doubtful. Why did the others know they were here? How could they recognize the hidden god vessels? With his roar, the god warriors hopped on the war chariots and moved forward through the death traps. Facing them was Ghost Hunter. The bloody corps formed by the experts of the Monster Clan and Demon Clan led by Ghost Hunter had stormed forward in its bite and nibble position like a gigantic serpent that could swallow everything. The troopers' auras were combined into one flow and they shot up to the sky. Leona had trained this corps personally. When she was in Raging Flamestar area, Leona's Blood Legion was really infamous. And now, the experts of the Monster Clan and Demon Clan had terrifying fighting competencies that were much more powerful than her former legion. This new Blood Legion was like a bloodthirsty beast, indeed. Right when they came, their combined auras above their heads had turned into a savage, massive serpent with an earth-shaking murderous aura. Court death. A god expert at First Sky of incipient god realm shouted with a stern face. Positions. God splits the whole world. Instantly, the war chariots split up like sharp sabers, their ethereal extents cooperating well with each other. Some specialized in releasing wind blades, icicles, and waves of fire. The experts specialized in defending had set up restrictions and barriers like water currents or an earth wall. They cooperated well in defending and attacking. They didn't fall into a disadvantageous situation while encountering Ghost Hunter's corps. As soon as they barged into each other, many divine weapons flew around and released radiant halos. Different energy attacks and pressing intent domains came with the shaking thunder and dragon lightning. Although the god clan was hurried, their power of position was like two wings of the devil that weren't weaker than the new Blood Legion commanded by Ghost Hunter. While engaging in this battle, the advantages of divine weapons, armors, and power Upanishads of the god clan were revealed. As time ticked by, they were going to eventually gain the upper hand. However, the Blood Legion had a new commander this time. It was Ghost Hunter, the future successor of Heavenly Monster Tribe. This creature was a mutant that had the blood of Heavenly Monster Tribe, Immortal Demon Blood, and Imperial Dark Tribe. Ghost Hunter was like a spear that could break anything. He didn't even care about the bombarding from the divine weapons, energy attacks, and the god warriors, storming right to the leader of this god clan's troop. Many ice swords, daggers, shields, waves of fire, and scorching lights hit his body. However, they immediately shattered and sent sparks everywhere. Ghost Hunter's monster body was so tough. He looked cold and rigid like ice and as agile as deadly lightning. He brutally marched to that god expert. Grrr! Ghost Hunter roared. The sound waves he created could even stab through people's eardrums. He was like an ancient beast thundering at his fate. The excellent armor on that expert exploded and shattered as Ghost Hunter had shouted. Then, Ghost Hunter thrust through his body like an arrow. After Ghost Hunter had pierced through that expert, the internal organs in the poor god warrior's body disappeared strangely. His body shattered. He perished at his spot in the middle of hovering red blood. Scatter and attack. Listen to my soul consciousness message. There are some spots we can't rush. Shi Yang suddenly appeared by Ghost Hunter. He squinted while doing a lot of tasks at the same time. His wisps of soul consciousness turned into soul messages that were sent to Blood Devil, Feng Han, Lin Xin, Yang Kai, and Bing Jie, telling them the directions to attack. Originally, he didn't know how to command a battle. However, today, He could see every slightest commotion of this battle, so he could help them find precise directions to avoid the dangers of the abyss. Blood Devil, Feng Han, Lin Xin directed their subordinates to avoid the death traps that the God Clan had set up beforehand easily. They now approached the areas that the God Clan didn't want them to touch the most. Those areas were the place they hadn't set up traps like the puzzled spirit lead cloud. At the same time, the God Warriors were still there to install traps, so they were too distracted to defend themselves. They came and made those God Warriors discolor in fear. They had to get their heads out of the traps to defend themselves. Kill! Benny shouted ear-piercingly. He had commanded the warriors of Fiery Rainstar area. Together with Ghost Hunter, they forcefully attacked the God Clan's core in the front. At the same time, his thought flickered and Shi Yang turned into many shadows moving through the areas where the battle was most fierce. Every area he glided by, the battle changed incredibly. The energy from the dead God Warriors or the warriors the God Clan had killed was all absorbed before it vanished. The deaths of the God Warriors and the warriors on Shi Yang's side weren't wasted. He had silently taken it in, pouring into the blood mark and converting it. He hadn't joined the battle yet. He just absorbed the energy like fish in the water. His acupuncture points were filled, which rippled the energy out of his body. "You're the commander." Suddenly, Wedderson's harsh voice came. He had located Shi Yang by Shi Yang's own soul consciousness. Then, he broke the void to approach him. At second sky of incipient God realm, Wedderson screamed like a beast jumping into the sheep pasture. His aura was brutal and domineering as if he feared nothing. The man blood had turned him into a bloodthirsty beast in the battle as if he had fallen into bedevilment. Shi Yang turned his head to check Wedderson. Suddenly, he was startled, his face astounded. He recognized a magical energy fluctuation from Wedderson. He felt familiar with Wedderson's aura. Chapter 13:16, Deadly Field. Chapter 13:16, Deadly Field. Wedderson stormed over fearlessly, his aura ruthless and bloodthirsty. His body glided through the void and he reached Shi Yang instantly. He struck a blow. Boom! A fierce explosion boomed the entire place. The gravitational field suddenly rocked and became several thousand times heavier. The void around Shi Yang had almost collapsed. He couldn't help but sink back into the dark abyss. Wedderson cultivated a very unique power Upanishad. It was the ability to create different kinds of fields. After his blow was made, the gravitational field in this area suddenly became strange. All the energy attacks vanished. The void where he had punched with his god power created a deep abyss that could suck everybody in it. In that special field, the earth and heaven energy didn't exist. The gravity suddenly rocketed and the gusts were wreaking havoc. Shi Yang had deeply experienced this feeling. He changed his countenance immediately. In the past, when he was still in Grace Mainland, he used to learn a martial technique called Deadly Gravitational Field. After he had practiced this technique, he could gather different energies in his body to create a magical magnetic field. The more kinds of energy he had, the deadly field created became more terrifying. It was like a stormy area with chaotic gravity that could wear out people's energy and souls, and shatter their bodies. The aura of the chaotic deadly field on Wedderson's body was what made him feel familiar. It was also Wedderson's power Upanishad that was strange and unique. Not many warriors cultivated it. This power Upanishad was a little similar to Ka Tuor's Chaos Power Upanishad. However, there were still some distinctive features. Ka Tuor's Chaos Power Upanishad stirred up everything. From his body as the center, his energy sucked and revolved all matter like cosmic dust, pieces of rocks, free energy, and even corpses. This powerful field could crush his energies badly. What Ka Tuor controlled was real matter and all things that had shapes. Wedderson's power Upanishad could create a vacuum field and change the magnetic field. In just a blink of an eye, he could create massive power to crush any creatures like a meat grinder. He had used the invisible gravitational power as the foundation to create a magnetic field and stir until everything inside was mashed. It was very similar to the deadly gravitational field that Shi Yang had created in the past. They were somehow similar in the nature of the power. This ability of Wedderson made Shi Yang feel familiar. However, there was something else. Shi Yang could feel some kind of subtle connection between him and Wedderson. This mysterious feeling was inexplicable and indescribable. Shi Yang remembered that he had a glimpse of this feeling when he saw Holy Beast Azure Dragon and Lei. Boom! The terrifying magnetic field covered Shi Yang. His soul altar was shaken while his body was cut by invisible blades. They attempted to mince him. Wedderson was at second sky of incipient god realm. If someone was reckless enough to fall into his magnetic field, that warrior would have no chance to escape. He could kill his victim quickly. Wedderson was confident. Although he didn't know Shi Yang's real identity, he knew that Shi Yang was at the same realm as him, second sky of incipient god realm. His magnetic field was really frightening. It could stir and shatter even an incipient extent. He made a faint, cruel laughter. Regardless of who you are, you'll be dead in my magnetic field. Wedderson was a hybrid between the man tribe and the god clan. With his unique power Upanishad, he could have a position in the Breckelfeld family and become the commander of the hidden god vessels. People who didn't know his power Upanishad could have no chance to resist. Before they could figure out how to counter with it, he could have killed them already. Wedderson's power Upanishad was the reason why Thornton had suppressed all the discontent of the family members and given him such an important role. After many bloody battles that he had won, Wedderson was so confident in his power Upanishad. After many years of combat with warriors at the same realm, not many people could escape his incredible magnetic fields. Even if they could escape, they were skinned or severely wounded. His confidence was built of this bloody reality. Are you sure I have to die here? Shi Yang's face twisted in the magnetic field. He showed his ferocious face, his eyes turning crimson. His body gradually shriveled. No matter who you are, you must die in this battle. Wedderson sounded confident. Not far from them, the warriors of the Bleckelfeld family relaxed when they saw Shi Yang's distorted face. Although they disdained Wedderson's origin, they knew how domineering his deadly magnetic field power Upanishad was. Recently, countless outstanding warriors had to perish inside Wedderson's magnetic field. They, of course, thought that Shi Yang would have the same consequence as the warriors who died in Wedderson's hands. His body was grounded altogether. It's good to be confident. But you shouldn't be self-important. The sort of people like that can't accept failures. I hope you understand. Shi Yang licked his lips. His eyes turned all red. A brutal, murderous aura that could shake the entire star area shot out from his body and then turned into a blood mist that naked eyes could observe. A blood membrane that was filled with desperation, brute, fear, madness, resentment, and bloodthirstiness covered him as if it was the source of perpetual evil. In this moment, Shi Yang inside the blood membrane seemed to become the fountainhead of evil, and the root of crimes in this world. Explode. 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 The three sounds of explode were like thunder bellowing in the sky or the roar of the devil from purgatory. All echoed inside the magnetic field. Crack. 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 Wedderson's magnetic field suddenly had many cracks that shattered. The wisps of magnetic power shot out like sharp blades that killed warriors nearby who couldn't dodge. The warriors of both sides died as they couldn't have a chance to dodge. Many of them were killed instantly. Swish. Shi Yang rose one hand and pulled as if he had torn a net. He escaped the magnetic field shortly after. His shoulder shivered and the blood membrane covering his body turned into a strange blood mist with negative auras of desperation, brutality, resentment, and fear that torrentially swarmed toward Wedderson. Roar. Wedderson roared, but his voice didn't sound human. The body of the mixed-blood became taller rapidly. After a few seconds, he was almost 1 meter taller. He was becoming a hairy monster with muscles like layers of rocks on his body. He looked so robust as if he could release the endless energy. As he roared, an invisible smoke diffused from his body. It was terrifyingly sour as if it could erode everything. It was extremely toxic acid from the venomous beast. It was similar to the toxic gas or Phelan's corrosion power Upanishad. However, it was much more dangerous than Phelan's corrosion power Upanishad. That kind of invisible smoke had blended perfectly with his deadly magnetic field as if it wanted to melt down all creatures. Shi Yang had discreetly absorbed the energy using his devouring power Upanishad. He had exploding energy in his acupuncture points that could explode the entire magnetic field. However, Wedderson had risen the storm once again by sending invisible corrosive toxins into his magnetic field. Shi Yang was shocked. His face became so grave as he had never been in this situation. In the next moment, both of his hands created a magical hand seal. That seal began to ripple and release the marvelous ability of space power Upanishad, creating layers of space barriers in an attempt to block Wedderson's magnetic field and prevent the toxins from blending with the magnetic field. He had a premonition that if he let this kind of extreme toxin fill this abyss, none of the warriors from his side and the God Clan's side would survive. Wedderson was crazy now. When the members of the man tribe were outraged, they transformed into a man-beast that made them act fearlessly. It was a feature that made the Breckelfeld family not want to acknowledge him as a member of their family. In their eyes, when Wedderson got mad, he became a beast that no one could tame. The Breckelfeld family would never consider a beast as their member. And one more thing. In the past, Wedderson had taken the warriors of the Breckelfeld to attack other forces many times. In some of the most perilous battles, Wedderson's madness had burst out. Although he had destroyed the enemies to the last member, he had also killed all the warriors of the Breckelfeld family who had accompanied him. In the eyes of the high-echelon experts of the Breckelfeld family, Wedderson had charges of manslaughter against those members. They couldn't forgive him for that. Thus, in their minds, Wedderson was just an uncivilized beast that they couldn't control. However, in the critical moment, it could make a significant effect. That was Wedderson's meaning of existence in their eyes. In fact, the Breckelfeld family warriors who had fought with Wedderson were killed because of the invisible toxin released after Wedderson turned wild. No one knew this fact, including Wedderson himself. It was because he was unconscious when he released that deadly toxin. And after he woke up, everything was already done. Today, Wedderson had burst out crazily again when Shi Yang's pressure had shattered his first magnetic field. He was backfired at that time, which had stimulated his man blood. The invisible corrosive toxin was the fountainhead of crime that had created many massacres. It appeared again and expanded with the magnetic field. It was going to slaughter one more time in this world. Even Shi Yang's space barriers couldn't stop this ultimate toxin. Layers of barriers corroded easily. Shi Yang was scared for the first time. He looked shocked upon seeing the magnetic field expanding widely and deeply, his complexion uncertain. He suddenly held his breath to concentrate on urging all of his energy to use the space power Upanishad. In just a blink of an eye, many magical passages appeared in this deadly abyss. Those deep passages appeared by the warriors following Shi Yang to this area. Shi Yang thundered, "Get into the space bridge to dodge the attack." His eyes released dazzling lights and they fell on Wedderson, changing continuously. He was shaken as he finally knew what the familiar aura he had sensed on Wedderson's body was. Chapter 13:17, Wedderson Rampages. Shi Yang is about to explode. Chapter 13:17, Wedderson Rampages. Shi Yang is about to explode. It was the aura of the existence at the level of heavenly monster tribe's ancestors. Also, only Shi Yang, the one with Grace Mainland's origin, could sense this kind of aura because he was Grace Mainland and every ancestor of heavenly monster tribe was born in Grace Mainland. Wedderson was the commander of the hidden god vessels of the God Clan and he had the god blood in his body. When he rampaged, he could turn into the undying god body. However, he had some unique features, though. Although he had transformed into something tall, muscular, and hairy, it was still his undying god body form. Unexpectedly, he had heavenly monster tribe's bloodline. Who was this man? Shi Yang was bewildered. Gaddo. It's Gaddo's blood. He's the chief of the corrosion force, one of the Cortege of 8. Only Gaddo had the acid toxin that could erode anything from flesh to soil in this world. Gaddo was the rarest beast of heavenly monster tribe. Heavenly monster tribe had avoided him. Before Gaddo had met Bloodthirsty, He always had secluded and cultivated by himself on a lifestar filled with extreme poisons. That lifestar was a forbidden area to any kind of creatures. Bloodthirsty was interested in Gaddo's ability. He bestowed him the corrosion power Upanishad. As he was a toxic beast himself, he had brought the corrosion power Upanishad to a new height that even Bloodthirsty couldn't imagine. Wedderson had Gaddo's blood in his body. When Wedderson had his rampage and lost his mind, his body diffused the invisible corrosive toxin, blending with his magnetic field and killing people. Shi Yang was also frightened to face this kind of toxin because even his space barriers eroded. He didn't have extra power to counter, so he had to let the warriors on his side leave immediately. The space passages were built by the troops of Ghost Hunter, Benny, and Blood Devil. Hearing Shi Yang shout, Ghost Hunter, Benny, Blood Devil, Lin Xin, and Fenghan didn't think much. They immediately ordered their warriors to leave. For the time being, they were leaving continuously using the space passage. All tried to escape at their fastest speed. They didn't have any doubt as they believed in Shi Yang unconditionally. All was because Shi Yang had saved them several times. Shi Yang was responsive to the invisible danger when Wedderson lost his mind. He immediately helped his warriors escape. Apparently, the warriors of the Beckelfeld family didn't recognize how deadly the situation was. In fact, the Beckelfeld had concealed the incidents where Wedderson had killed all of his warriors. They had considered it as unsolved puzzles. Thus, the warriors following Wedderson in this battle didn't know the lethal consequences when Wedderson lost his mind. They were confused when they saw their opponents retreat into the space passages. Those people didn't dare to enter the space passages to chase after Blood Devil and the others since they were afraid of traps that Shi Yang might have set up in his space passage. Soon, the disaster fell on their heads. After Wedderson burst out crazy, he lost his mind, but he had locked Shi Yang with a wisp of soul consciousness. In his head, he had only one thought, which was to kill Shi Yang. The strange energy in his body rose like a rising tide. The magnetic field expanded rapidly. The invisible erosive toxins had filled the magnetic field and turned the god warriors into nothing. Shi Yang was aghast. In his eyes, after the god warriors were covered inside the magnetic field, their bodies shattered and everything eroded until they had nothing left. They melted down directly. In that glimpse of time, this death trap was filled with thick energy. The energy from the dead warriors was drawn massively and wildly toward Shi Yang by his devouring power Upanishad. This place had become an immense sea of energy left by the warriors of the God clan. It helped Shi Yang reach his target. There were dozens of thousands of god warriors here and many of them had reached original god realm, ethereal god realm, and even incipient god realm. Dozens of thousands of them dissolved and released thick energy that had Shi Yang's acupuncture points balloon as if he was about to explode in any second. Shi Yang was shocked. He looked at Wedderson, his face astounded. Wedderson's intimidation was over his estimation. Wedderson's magnetic field continued to expand. Within dozens of seconds, more than 10,000 god warriors had disappeared inexplicably. Even the experts at the false immortal realm couldn't carry out such a massacre. Wedderson at his second sky of incipient god realm could do that. The members of the god clan finally recognized that something was wrong. Looking at their comrades dissolving and disappearing unknowingly, their blood and flesh vanishing into thin air. Many of them began to collapse, shouting and screaming desperately. They felt like they were inside a lethal storm where demons were nibbling at them little by little. They didn't know what happened. They didn't realize how terrifying Wedderson was as Shi Yang did. They thought that their opponents were attacking him. The invisible toxin had taken the lives and killed the members of the god clan. As the deadly field was reaching out, at least 1/3 of the god warriors here were killed and the amount of energy from their deaths had stuffed Shi Yang as if it wanted to blow him up. At this moment, the acupuncture points in his entire body were like 720 worlds working until they were overloaded. The vortexes were spinning rapidly and crazily filtering power. The energy became like small streams murmuring and flowing out of his acupuncture points, pouring into his god power ancient tree. It seemed to never end. Shi Yang could feel that his god power ancient tree couldn't endure for much longer. He used his spatial abilities to shift around and change his locations continuously. Wedison chased after him. Wherever Wedison moved, he dragged his magnetic field with him. Shi Yang was heading to the area where most of the god warriors gathered. It led to more god warriors getting killed. It was like their doomsday. The victims screamed, but their bodies still scattered into thin air. In this battle, Wedison's intimidation had helped Shi Yang achieve his goal. The energy he had taken in today was as much as the amount accumulated in hundreds of years. Quickly, around 10,000 warriors had become nothing under Wedison's rage. The surviving god warriors collapsed. They saw Shi Yang's dark scheme. They immediately ran away and scattered. No one dared to gather anymore. They didn't care about the possible wounds and used all kinds of escape technique they could use. At this moment, the 720 acupuncture points in Shi Yang's body were stuffed. They had reached the limit. It seemed like it was going to explode if Shi Yang took in more energy. He was now like a bottle full of water that couldn't take even one more drop. Shi Yang was moved. He turned to watch a spot where more warriors were gathering. They were the main force of the God clan, the warriors who were about to attack hexagonal Starland. He threw a glance at Wedison and mumbled, "Good things should be done." Then, he dashed towards that area. Wedison hissed and roared, following him and dragging the magnetic field that could erode all kinds of creatures. It was truly a catastrophe. Chapter 1318, Crazily Spread Out. Chapter 1318, Crazily Spread Out. The battleships of the God Clan were patrolling around the southeast corner of hexagonal Starland like a school of hungry sharks. Each battleship carried many experts of the God Clan. Those experts had calm and ancient auras with some tinge of harsh and bloody makings. Evidently, they were experts who had experienced many bloody wars. The family flag of the Breckelfeld family was floating above one of those battleships. Their flag had the drawings of majestic mountains and rivers that represented the family's ambitions and principle, merging the vast lands into their territory and increasing their power. Thornton was the current chief of the Breckelfelds. He was in his prime time of life. His shawled hair looked like a flame on his sturdy body, his eyes hiding magical light. He cultivated metal power at third sky of incipient god realm. With his gold armor, Thornton was addressed as the gold god of war in the God Clan. At this moment, Thornton squinted and one of his knees touched the ground inside the secret chamber of the battleship, his face serious. In front of him was a palm-sized shining gold leaf. The veins in the leaf looked like strange snakeskin. They were thin and sharp like silky golden fibers. However, they all looked powerful. All of a sudden, the snakeskin on the gold leaf moved and radiated gold light that could even pierce through a star area. A terrifying magnetic force like billions of erupting volcanoes shot out from that small leaf. It seemed like the gold leaf had just received energy that would never be exhausted. A shadow suddenly appeared in the chamber. It was Pargo, chief of the Austin family. He cultivated earth power Upanishad and was at third sky of incipient god realm. It seemed like Pargo had kept an eye on this area. As soon as he found something marvelous happening, he immediately crossed the space to get here. Pargo's light brown eyes focused on the gold leaf as he spoke excitedly, "With the power to destroy the barrier from the brutal extinguishing god leaf, it's as easy as flipping a hand to take down hexagonal Starland. This time, the Elder Committee has poured the energy into this leaf. This kind of strong support has never happened before." The brutal extinguishing god leaf was a secret treasure of the God Clan that only the heads of the 12 families could keep. While conquering the star areas, if they encountered a barrier they couldn't break with their own power, they could use this leaf. However, the brutal extinguishing god leaf was a sort of consumable item that they could use only one time. Every time, they had to pour terrifying energy into it to use it one more time. Also, they had to ask for that amount of energy from the Elder Committee. If the Elder Committee considered it reasonable, they would pour energy into the leaf. People rumored that the energy in the brutal extinguishing god leaf came from a magical source in ancient god continent that directly connected to the origin of the God Clan's ancestral star. Thus, the Elder Committee was very strict in considering whether or not to pour energy to the brutal extinguishing god leaf. Usually, They wouldn't bestow the energy to a star area war that wasn't really important to them. Thornton carefully put away the brutal extinguishing god leaf. He looked relaxed after that. This battle is the first official battle between Bloodthirsty Force and us. Of course, the Elder Committee has to consider it as important. We got advantages in Fiery Rain Star area. With this brutal extinguishing god leaf, we will win quickly. Pausing for a while, Thornton said seriously, we need to win this battle to raise our warrior's spirit. Pargo nodded, his face stern. Let's play the introduction of the victory song through this battle. Each of the warriors of the God Clan knew that they had to overcome this Kalpa if they wanted to continue to be the kings of this cosmos for the next 10,000 years. In this war, the members of the God Clan were more united than ever before. Each of the God members understood the critical level of this battle to the future of their race deeply. Previously, the 12 families often competed illicitly, but today, they were united to fight for the big plan of their race. There was no barrier between them now. The God Clan today was in their prime after 10,000 years of accumulation. They had invaded dozens of star areas to rob the best cultivating materials in this universe. If they lost this war, the God Clan would fall off the divine altar. Their 10,000 years of glory would vanish. To every member of the God Clan, this war was so important that they couldn't make mistakes. Fire from our side to push the God Clan's future to another height. Thornton bellowed, his eyes resolute. Move. Launch this last strike. We're going to break the defense of Fiery Rainstar area and hunt the damn Bloodthirsty Force to the last member. Thornton and Pargo flashed and then disappeared from the secret chamber. They reappeared in the control center of their own battleships. Thornton held the brutal extinguishing god leaf with full energy. He was so confident when he looked at the crowd of his warriors. He wore a stern face and was ready to spread out the order to attack massively. However, right at this moment, ear-piercing voices came out from the jade voice-transmitting devices installed in the control center. The cries and screams had shocked everybody. This kind of voice-transmitting device was made of many sound stones. As long as they were in the same star area, they could use the sound stone to call to the center in emergency cases. Sir. A mysterious, domineering enemy appeared. Oh my God. Our members were killed unknowingly. They disappeared massively. We can't stand it anymore. Wedderson is crazy. We can't spot that mysterious attacker. We're dying. We've lost 10,000 members. The call for help from the sound transmitting device was pathetic and filled with screaming and crying. Thornton and the other members of the God Clan became cold and stern, listening to the others' hopeless screams. Wedderson burst out crazily again. It's all because of him. Diego, we should have killed him earlier. See, it's happening again, shrieked Sauter, Thornton's younger brother. The members at the high echelon of the family wore a dark face. They seemed to have guessed something. It's not normal this time. When his madness burst out in the past, he had killed several hundred or thousand of warriors. But now, I think something unexpected had happened. Thornton was still calm. He didn't change his complexion much. Pondering for a while, he said all of a sudden. In the past, Wedderson used to lose his mind while carrying out his mission, which led to the deaths of his warriors. But we haven't figured out why. We didn't know what had happened. This time we are here. Perhaps we could know what secret Wedderson has. Thornton looked at the others and took a deep breath. You don't know why I've kept Wedderson in our team until now, and I even let him hold a high position. It's not because he has half of our family's blood in his body. It's because Wedderson has something powerful I can't explain. I know he has some hidden energy. Sometimes I can feel it, but most of the time I can't. I'm keeping him to see if I can decode that mystery one day. Pausing for a while, he shouted. Today, it's the time to see what kind of earth-shaking secret Wedderson has. Then, he continuously gave orders and sent messages to Pargo of the Austin family. Pargo immediately talked to the experts in his family. Shortly after, Thornton and Pargo led a group of experts from their family, gathering them and heading to the death trap in the abyss. However, after they had moved a short distance, Thornton and Pargo discolored as they looked at the area ahead of them. In front of them were the warriors of the God clan who should have stayed hidden in the death trap, running helter-skelter like stray dogs. They were running toward them. Those people had a lot of deep wounds on their bodies. However, it was obvious that those wounds were created by a special escape method of the God clan. In other words, those people had run away before they had engaged in the battle. Thornton understood well how bold and evil the warriors of his family on the hidden god vessels were. He knew that they would never harm themselves like that to run away unless they encountered something they couldn't parry. It meant that the situation ahead of them had come to the most dangerous moment. Thornton was hesitant. He then used his soul consciousness to send a message. Elder Spark, please come to see this. The bloodthirsty force may mobilize some expert like you. His message was sent not long when they saw a starlight shot out from the sea of stars behind them. Elder Spark appeared, his face cold and dark. Nonsense. I've always used my soul to check around. Where the heck did that false immortal realm expert come from? But Spark had to change his complexion even before he finished. He looked astounded. Spark saw warriors from the hidden god vessels dissolve one after another right in front of him. Everything happened inexplicably. Their bodies suddenly turned into a light wisp of smoke and vanished. It was extremely bizarre. Thornton, Pargo, and even Spark felt chilled and scared. They only saw their family warriors put on faces of finally seeing the exit in the deadly situation when they saw them and Spark at the false immortal realm right before they evaporated. The gleam of a thrill was still on their faces at the last moment of their lives. It was like a massive thing hammered on Thornton's and Pargo's chests. They had the ache of someone using a knife to stab and twist it in their stomachs. No. It's not true. Not the false immortal realm expert. Suddenly, Spark looked panicked. His body shook as he finally got a hold of himself and shouted, "It's Gaddo. It's Gaddo's aura. My God. What's going on?" Gaddo was dead. He exploded to death. I saw that with my own eyes. Gaddo. Chief of the corrosion force, one of the bloodthirstiest cortege of 8. Sauter screamed. Thornton and Pargo discolored in fright. Thornton was baffled for a while before screaming, "No, it's not Gaddo. It's Wedderson. It's Wedderson's aura. It can't be wrong." While he was shrieking in fear, Wedderson's special deadly field had approached massively like a flooding sea. The invisible acid toxin in that magnetic field didn't cease. However, only the incipient God realm experts could recognize the terrifying features of that corrosive acid toxin. The extreme poison was now a malignant tumor that was about to burn down this world. It was still spreading out crazily, massively, and unceasingly. My gosh. Such a terrifying toxin, whined an incipient God realm expert. People went numb in a deep fear because they saw a scene that they would never forget for the rest of their entire lives. Wedderson slowly emerged. A level 6 life star nearby was covered in Wedderson's field. Under their gazing eyes, the entire planet was slowly disappearing. His poison could even melt down the entire life star. How formidably terrifying was it? Chapter 1319, Erode the Entire World. Chapter 1319, Erode the Entire World. Deep inside the Blood Sea Holy Land. Xian he was sitting on a corner of the Death Island, his face grave. Next to him were many star compasses that were spherical like life stars. They scattered by him like a miniature version of the galaxy with many stars that was scaled billions of times smaller. Each of the star compasses was shining and a vague, exquisite string had chained them all together. Frederick was frowning and sitting not far from him. There were so many star compasses lying around him too. The halos from these star compasses were like twinkling stars in the universe that made the two of them look like they were sitting on a galaxy. Both of them were at second sky of Immortal Realm and they were the chiefs of the Death Force and the Corpse Chi Force. Their spirit, chi, and soul were connecting to each of the star compasses as if they could promote some changes and use their thoughts to operate the entire sea of stars and control the fierce, current battles in many star areas. After a long time, Frederick held and pulled his hair agitatedly, frowning deeply. According to the current general picture, it's not easy to win. He could see the general situation of the war in the 12 star areas through the star passages, and that general situation wasn't fine to the bloodthirsty force. After 10,000 years of accumulation, the God clan had left the other clans far behind regarding munitions and experiences. It could be said that no single force could defeat the God clan now. Although Imperial Dark Tribe, Heavenly Monster Tribe, and Immortal Demon Clan were the powerful races of the 4 great creatures, they couldn't compare to the current God clan in any aspect. According to Frederick, if they didn't have anything new, they would lose in all 12 star areas. The God clan would gain the advantage and smash them one by one. Don't be anxious. Ming Hao has been operating subtly for many years. The forces we see now aren't all of what we have. He was still calm and relaxed. He chuckled. If Ming Hao wasn't so sure, he wouldn't agree to fight against the God clan. You and I just need to take care of our teams. He'll give us a big surprise. Although he didn't get along well with Ming Hao, he knew how powerful Ming Hao was. Otherwise, he wouldn't have endured the pain for 10,000 years without taking retaliation. After the previous meeting, what Ming Hao had said had unknotted many things in his heart. Although he still found Ming Hao annoying, he wasn't extreme anymore. When he calmed down to talk to Ming Hao, he knew Ming Hao's functions were more important than his in this war. Because of the soul control power Upanishad, it was the innate advantage that could help him discreetly change the situation of the Sea of Stars. It wasn't something that his death power Upanishad could compare to. He also knew that Ming Hao had already conquered many forces even before Bloodthirsty had fallen. After 10,000 years of hiding in the dark, no one could estimate how many strong forces Ming Hao had controlled. All the time, the God clan had tried their best to discover Ming Hao's real identity and forces to break them all. But no matter what, the Elder Committee and the 12 families of the God clan couldn't figure out Ming Hao's real tendencies and his lair. Ming Hao still lived well and used his influence to change the general situation of the entire Sea of Stars. He had triggered many forces to fight against the God clan. Many people said that Ming Hao was behind the troubles that hurt the God clan and kept them from taking down many important star areas. Because of Ming Hao, the God clan's forward movement was held. They couldn't progress as fast as they wished. He and Frederick suddenly squinted as they were talking. They couldn't believe it. The terrifying commotion in this bodies had stirred up the blood sea and made the vortexes above their heads spin rapidly. Can you feel it? Hissed He. Frederick nodded to confirm, his face aghast. He looked at the endless void above their heads and said, his aura. It's impossible. He'd fallen a long time ago. Why does his aura still exist? Unbelievable. He sounded very serious. Right at this moment, a wisp of soul pierced through the sky and turned into Ming Hao's clone. He looked at He and Frederick and then said, it seems like you guys got it. He and Frederick nodded quietly. He died that year. Ming Hao suddenly frowned. But I haven't found his remains yet. It should be some secret of his death. I've spent 10,000 years to investigate and found nothing. Today, his aura appears in Fiery Rain Star area, but it's a little different. I think we should take it seriously. Pausing for a while, Ming Hao smiled oddly. That kid is in Fiery Rain Star area, too. To be exact, his aura appeared all of a sudden because of that kid. This kid is truly a disaster. Wherever he goes, big troubles will happen. Show us. Frederick hissed impatiently. Ming Hao smiled darkly. As you wish. Ming Hao's wisp of soul changed and generated a strange energy fluctuation. After a flash, Ming Hao, He, and Frederick got out of the Blood Sea and reappeared on the barren ancient demon continent. The black hole hovered by ancient demon continent like a shadow. After Ming Hao, He, and Fiery Rainstar area reappeared, Ming Hao rose one hand and pulled the void, creating a mirror that projected the situation in Fiery Rainstar area in detail. Before Ming Hao had met Bloodthirsty, he was DeCarlo's brother from the same school and he cultivated space power Upanishad. And he had never given up space power Upanishad. In this vast sea of stars, only Ming Hao could stand shoulder to shoulder with DeCarlos when talking about the attainment in cultivating space power Upanishad. Xian He and Fiery Rainstar area pulled themselves together and looked at the space mirror. Their countenances changed instantly. What they saw was exactly what the God Clan experts were witnessing. Wedderson rampaged. The formidably erosive toxins diffusing from his body had covered a life star and dissolved it little by little. Under the gaze of the God Clan experts, Shi Yang's shock, and Xian He from afar, Frederick and Ming Hao watched that level 6 life star disappear from this cosmos. It was lucky that the residents on that life star had evacuated a long time ago, but the spirit beasts and insects there were all gone with the planet. The acid toxins from that warrior is absolutely what Gado controls in the past. But he got the undying god body of the God Clan, so he has the god bloodline. He cultivates a strange magnetic field power Upanishad. This man is really mysterious, I suppose, said Frederick, frowning and confusing. Xian He kept silent. After a long time, he said, that aura belongs to Gado. Only his extreme toxins and the corrosion power Upanishad could erode the entire life star. This man should have some relation to Gado. He doesn't cultivate corrosion power Upanishad. The aura of that corrosive toxin seems to imprint in his soul and flesh. It's extremely abnormal. Ming Hao nodded and then said, seems like we have to ask him to know what happened to him. He's at first sky of incipient god realm, but the power he's showing now is at the false immortal realm. Xian He knitted his brows tightly and shook his head. It's not normal. Too abnormal. There's something we couldn't reason here. Because even if he has Gado's blood, he couldn't be powerful like that. Something we can't see through here. He looked at Ming Hao, pondering. After a while, he said, perhaps, you should go there personally to see. Ming Hao had a strange light sparkle in his eyes. If I get there, the tacit agreement between the God Clan and us will be torn. When the Immortal Realm experts fight in the Fiery Rainstar area, they will destroy the Fiery Rainstar area altogether. Listening to him, both Xian He and Frederick had to furrow their brows. This tacit understanding wasn't only between the God Clan and the bloodthirsty force. It had existed for a long time like an unwritten principle that all experts at the Immortal Realm followed. It was because whenever the existences at the Immortal Realm fought fiercely in the high-level star areas until one of them died, they shattered that star area altogether. In this vast universe, the number of galaxies wasn't unlimited. Destroying an entire star area meant killing billions of lives and extinguishing the future of many races dwelling there. It was a brutal genocide and irresponsible to their own races. The star areas were the core cells of the Foundation. They could never rebuild the destroyed ones. In the past, many star areas had disappeared in an attempt to kill Bloodthirsty. Since then, most of the Immortal Realm experts had quietly followed this agreement. Even if they wanted to fight each other to the death, they would choose the burned-down star area. It was a strange land that didn't have any life star but some fragment of the planet and countless rotten corpses of the experts, bits of chaotic energy, and more. It was unimaginably horrible, indeed. After billions of years, there were so many star areas destroyed by peerless existences. Once they were broken, the star areas would drift and merge in that strange area that was called Sea Domain of Nihility. It was the toughest area in the entire cosmos. That area was vastly immense and it was like it didn't have the end. It was even more mysterious and spectacular than the chaotic space basin. Until now, nobody had successfully discovered its mysteries. Before Ming Hao had given his conclusion, many people had guessed that Bloodthirsty had come from the deep place inside. However, only the Immortal Realm experts could enter that area. It was the official arena of the Immortal Realm existences. The four great heavenly kings Light, Carefree, Easygoing, and Divine Marshal who had disappeared for thousands of years used to cultivate in this area. Spark had also had his practiced in the peripheral area to reach the false Immortal Realm. Rumor said that Ming Hao's real body was hidden there. Also, Desolate, the ancient moving continent, and the other four ancient continents had a deep relationship with Sea Domain of Nihility. I can't get there. Otherwise, big troubles that we can't control could happen. Ming Hao contemplated for a while and then said, that kid is there and it's because of him too. I'm sure he sensed Gado's aura from that warrior. We just need to watch from here. I will send him a soul message to tell him your suspicions. Xian He and Frederick thought and nodded begrudgingly in agreement. At this moment, Shi Yang was moving fast like a shuttle through the void of fiery rainstar area. His situation wasn't really positive. Wedderson was chasing after him and his acupuncture points were changing in his body. At this moment, the vortexes in his acupuncture points were spinning crazily and giving him intense pain that was hundreds of times worse than the previous times of filtering and refining energy. Shi Yang thought that his body was about to have some strange change. Chapter 1320, Death and Life Rotating Bridge. Chapter 1320, Death and Life Rotating Bridge. Each of the 720 acupuncture points in Shi Yang's entire body had become a new world that was so vast. This kind of world had only a high sky without a ground. The sky was filled with many small and big vortexes spinning massively. At this moment, the wildly spinning vortexes in his acupuncture points were releasing earth-shaking energy. The acupuncture points were the source of the devouring power Upanishad, and it was where it refined energy magically. Shi Yang's acupuncture points had collected scattering energy and filtered it using the vortexes to generate mysterious but pure energy that his god power ancient tree could absorb directly or could use to train his body. It was like a functional process. Different kinds of energies came in. They were refined and became energy that his body could use directly to benefit him. However, this refining process also created dregs that were negative emotions like desperation, fear, resentment, brutality, and dirtiness. Those energies were so mixed that he couldn't absorb it all. They stayed in his acupuncture points and he could use the rampage realm to urge and use those energies. They would turn into a furious flood that attacked his opponent's sea of consciousness and soul. The devouring power Upanishad didn't waste a bit of energy. It had taken in all the energy that could be refined to strengthen his body. Also, the energy that his acupuncture points couldn't refine could be released at a critical time to increase his power quickly. This kind of negative energy would hit the other's souls severely. There was nothing that Shi Yang could complain about this power. This devouring power Upanishad was acknowledged as the most magical and extreme power Upanishad in the cosmos. It harmed the others to benefit its users. It was truly the first evil power Upanishad. Today, the energy he had taken in from more than 10,000 dead warriors of the God clan had flooded his acupuncture points. The vortexes in his acupuncture points had spun more crazily. They began to ache. He felt like he could be blown up in any minute. He was so panic-stricken. While trying to avoid Wedderson, he could see the changes inside his body. In his acupuncture points, the filtered, negative energy accumulated was piling up in the vast world. The load had slowed down the vortexes. They seemed to stop moving soon. It was what could happen to the dedicated tools that were overworked and about to break. This finding frightened him. He determinedly stopped absorbing energy. He focused on checking his body. Shortly after, his soul consciousness had turned into 720 wisps that checked each of the borderless worlds in his acupuncture points. At the same time, he quietly urged his soul altar to raise the ethereal extent. He had a vague feeling that the incipient extent would be the key to calming down the strange situation of his body. He remembered the fight he had with Haig where he had poured negative energy from the acupuncture points into the incipient extent and sent his black hole to the incipient extent altogether. At that time, he could swallow the star from Haig's incipient extent. At that time, the enormous amount of required energy had almost exhausted his acupuncture points. Today, the piled-up negative energy had slowed down his acupuncture points. Although it could be a big help in the critical moment when his acupuncture points were overloaded, the refining process would then decelerate. Currently, the energy from more than 10,000 warriors of the God clan was over the limit he could endure. To change this bad situation, he had two options. The first option was that he must release a part of his negative energy. The second option was that he would expand the world inside the acupuncture points to make more room for the energy and increase the upper limit of his acupuncture points. Sensing the peculiar changes in his body, the premonition that danger was about to come notified him fast. Pondering for a while, Shi Yang made a quick decision. He urged the soul altar to discreetly use the devouring power Upanishad. He directly pulled the black hole in his soul altar into his incipient extent. At that moment, the negative energy inside Shi Yang's acupuncture points was drawn fast. The energy poured into the brilliant, galaxy-like ethereal extent. Suddenly, a magical understanding came to his mind. Shi Yang's face looked like he just had a flash of great recognition. The 720 acupuncture points in his body had fused with his incipient extent at this moment. They had become part of his incipient extent. This feeling was so marvelous. He was perplexed for a while, as if a soul of some god had just come and ruled his incipient extent. Shi Yang's incipient extent had stars, and the void was like a small universe. And now, as his incipient extent and his acupuncture points had fused, he had a feeling. He felt that his universe now had 720 star areas. The worlds inside the acupuncture points were like star areas. However, they didn't have a sun, moon, stars or plants and creatures. They had only vortexes like the star area that was ruined once. This magical feeling stormed into his heart. Miraculously, he discovered that the immense worlds in his acupuncture points were extending rapidly. It seemed like they had expanded several times in just a blink of an eye. The 720 wisps of soul consciousness he had sent to the acupuncture points now had the same feeling. Shi Yang immediately understood that the worlds in his acupuncture points had actually expanded. They had increased their storage upper limit. In the next moment, he found that the stagnant vortexes that had almost ceased to move had become larger and could collect and refine more energy at a faster speed. Almost at the same time, the pure energy released from the eye of the vortexes flew out of the acupuncture points. It was the mysterious, pure energy he could absorb into his God Power ancient tree or body directly. However, his God Power ancient tree and his entire body were filled with pure energy. Shi Yang was filled. As soon as his mind flickered, he had a subtle expression when shining streams shot out of his acupuncture points. Just like the bands of starlight, the streams of energy flew toward the space passages he had created before and disappeared. Hexagonal Starland. Each of the warriors cultivating the power Upanishads imparted by Bloodthirsty on the battleships with the blood cloud mark on their foreheads was all shaken. They were in disbelief and were looking at the space passages. They had returned to hexagonal starland through the space passages. And now, the pure and shining bands of starlight pierced through the space passages like streams pouring into their heads through the blood marks. Benny, Blood Devil, and Ka Tuor were the ones with the biggest benefits. They were all thrilled. It wasn't the first time they received such power. They immediately knew that this energy had come from the new master of the bloodthirsty force. They eased their minds and focused on receiving energy. Many warriors cultivating the 8 great power Upanishads hadn't been familiar with Shi Yang. They were bewildered for a while before they could recognize what was happening. They pulled themselves together and felt so happy. The band of starlights got through the mark on their foreheads and sent a flow of pure energy directly into their God Power ancient tree. It strengthened them. They didn't even need to think to know what it meant to them. Thus, they sat down, getting a hold of themselves to receive a surprising gift from Shi Yang. The other warriors who didn't cultivate the 8 great power Upanishads didn't know the subtle mysteries of Bloodthirsty, so they didn't know what was going on. They didn't know why this group of warriors dared to open their most vulnerable spot on the head to receive an unknown stream of light. Aren't they afraid to get hit through the soul altar and get killed? The others couldn't know this secret. However, Min Hao, Frederick, and Xian He were shocked while they watched everything through the mirror in ancient demon continent. They were baffled, indeed. The 3 chiefs kept silent, but the uncertain light shot out from their eyes. They all looked at Shi Yang and the bands of starlight streaming out of his acupuncture points. They knew what those bands were. I couldn't think that he could learn the marvelous abilities of the devouring power Upanishad that fast. He can build the death and life rotating bridge now. He can absorb energy from the dead and generate vitality to benefit his subordinates with his body as the bridge. We've underestimated him. Later, we can't just use him as a puppet. Frederick smacked his lips and shook his head. Xian He and Ming Hao exchanged looks. They saw fear in each other's eyes. They didn't talk much and just nodded. They understood one thing: Shi Yang had comprehended the devouring power Upanishad. With this death and life rotating bridge, he could change the competing structure in the future. As they were characters who used to live in that era, they remembered they got hurt many times and their master had used death and life rotating bridge to heal them. They could even be stronger afterward. Shi Yang reminded them of the past. Lao Luo didn't choose the wrong candidate. Ming Hao let out a slight sigh after a while. Xian He and Frederick were also touched. Wedderson, wake up. At the same time, Thornton, the chief of the Breckelfeld family, pitched his voice and thundered grumblingly. His voice was like thunder booming around Wedderson. However, Wedderson was still sinking in his insanity. He dashed towards them with his erosive magnetic field that could melt everything down. The first warrior who got inside the magnetic field eroded and vanished. He didn't leave even a drop of blood. The warriors of the Breckelfeld family and Austin family were extremely panicked. Even Elder Spark at the false immortal realm had to put on a cold face and shout hoarsely, "Move! Retreat! Do not go near that man. He has deadly corrosive toxins from Gado. I'm afraid that I can't deal with an extreme poison that can melt down the entire life star. Scatter and think about how to wake him up. We can't parry him. Do not face him." Spark shouted and ordered the God Clan warriors to disperse. Right when the God Clan was about to disperse, a hunky young man suddenly appeared in the middle of their position like evil mingling in the horde of people. With the brutal aura, Wedderson gazed at that spot like a wild animal smelling a delicious meal. He rashly stormed over. All the members of the God Clan were frightened. They screamed and ran crazily for their lives. Even Spark had to run helter-skelter with them. Wedderson in his madness was an earth-destroying catastrophe, indeed. It seemed like no one could stop him in this fiery rainstar area. Chapter 1321, Unrivaled Great Devil. Chapter 1321, Unrivaled Great Devil. Wedderson was now an earth-destroying calamity. The planets in his way melted down, creatures turned into nothing. All matter dissolved. No one knew what had happened to Wedderson. After this man became insane, his power had rocketed earth-shakingly. Even Spark feared him and hurried to leave. However, Wedderson also accelerated as his energy increased. Thornton, Pargo, and a group of incipient God Realm experts could predict his move beforehand and leave one step early because they had profound realms. However, those whose realms were below incipient God Realm didn't have such luck. They couldn't escape. Wedderson's deadly field expanded and covered them. They were all from an elite force of the two families at ethereal God Realm. However, none of them could escape. All were dissolved. Right before the deadly field covered them, an evil silhouette disappeared in their formation. After another flash, that silhouette changed the direction and dashed toward the next spot where more members of the two families gathered. He wanted to drive Wedderson to the most important area of the Breckelfeld family and the Austin family. He wanted to use Wedderson's erosive power to eliminate all the core elite warriors of the two big families. Thornton's eyes reddened. He thundered as if he had a mental problem. His roar was like grumbling thunder that swarmed toward Wedderson. Wedderson had completely lost his mind. He ignored Thornton's bellowing call. In his heart only one fixation now lay: kill Shi Yang. He had locked Shi Yang's aura. No matter where Shi Yang was heading, he could chase after him closely. When Shi Yang moved again toward the horde of the two families of the God Clan, Wedderson naturally came after him. No, not that. Spark suddenly found something wrong. He checked and discolored. Shi Yang. Shi Yang is the reason why Wedderson went crazy. He has manipulated Wedderson and made him continue his pursuit. Spark got it now. Wedderson shouldn't have lost his mind to that level for a long time like this. Spark was correct. Shi Yang had some influence in this. The negative energy in Shi Yang's acupuncture points was the sort of energy that could push people to the edge. He had stimulated the negative energy, created torrents, and sent them to Wedderson's head, making him more ruthless and mad. Just like fire receiving more oil, Wedderson's insanity was burning that had triggered the bloodthirsty nature of his man blood. Completely, he had lost himself. No need to mention Thornton's shouting. Even if Spark used his power to wake Wedderson up, it was no use. With the current of negative energy flooding his mind, Wedderson was now a man-beast that had ultimately sunk into the simple joy of killing. He didn't have a bit of consciousness left in him. The new master of bloodthirsty force. Thornton sounded scared. Spark nodded gravely, his eyes sparkling. He's discreetly making trouble. He used a evil, negative force to Wedderson to keep him in his madness. We have to capture him to wake Wedderson up. Then, Spark flashed and disappeared. Thornton and Pargo exchanged looks. The flames of anger burst out in their eyes. They urged the soul altars and attacked Shiyang. Surprisingly, Shiyang was in an important spot where most members of the two families gathered. The main forces to attack Fiery Rainstar area this time were based there. Before Thornton and Pargo arrived, they had sent messages to their troopers and asked them to disperse to avoid Wedderson's lethal field. They couldn't afford more losses. A shadow appeared between the gigantic battleships of the God Clan. A wisp of soul consciousness was released. This beam of soul consciousness was used to track Wedderson down, and it was also the clue for Wedderson to follow Shiyang. However, as soon as Shiyang released his soul consciousness, he was startled as he could sense the invisible danger. He slightly changed his complexion, snorted, and touched his glabella. The blood mark on his forehead turned into the bright blood lights weaving with each other. Shortly after, a seething blood sea emerged. In the beginning, the blood sea occupied a very small area. After a blink of an eye, it had expanded unceasingly and covered many battleships in this area. The god warriors on the battleships were bewildered. Then, the Low Realm warriors lost control of their minds. The strange and evil soul energy had quietly seeped into their sea of consciousness. In a split second, the God Clan warriors roared and thundered angrily. Their eyes now had only a desire to kill. The Blood Soul Sea required a lot of efforts and energy to use. It needed the enemy's blood and the user's god power. Anyway, after breaking through to second sky of incipient God Realm and collecting an enormous amount of energy into his acupuncture points, Shiyang could directly use the Soul Seal as a guide and the God Power as the source of energy to use this ability. At the same time, the Blood Soul Sea he had just created had become wider and more terrifying. The negative energy that was stagnant in Shiyang's acupuncture points had all poured into the Blood Soul Sea and boiled it up, making it like a giant bloody mouth that was about to swallow and chew off any creature. As soon as the Blood Sea emerged, most of the God Clan warriors mentally collapsed. They began to attack each other. While his thoughts flickering, the bloody shield had turned into his exquisite armor and fused perfectly with his immortal demon body. He clutched the bloody sword in his hand and slashed. The blood-dripping eyes on the sword opened. A cruel, evil aura shot out from him instantly. Boom, boom, boom. The bloody sword swayed in his hand and pointed in a direction. Blood exploded and raised a tsunami on the Blood Sea. A brilliant, heavenly river turned into a pure stream that shot forward from an extremely far area. Elder Spark rode the stream and shouted ear-piercingly, "How dare you!" The cold, icy light zoomed out of his incipient extent and turned into 6 ice serpents that looked as magnificent as if they were made of stars in the sky. The great serpents were crystal clear with large, fanged mouths. They were so lively and real with Spark's life aura. The 6 giant serpents came from 6 directions with their formidable momentum. They wanted to chew Shiyang off. Shiyang lifted his head, his face cold and heartless. He sneered, "You could wound me severely or even kill me in Tsunami Star. But now, you don't have that ability anymore." The bloody sword in his hand flew out. The eyes on the sword wiggled out of the sword body shortly after. They floated above the Blood Sea. Flesh began to grow around the eyes and become gruesome, evil ancient demogons. The ancient demogons were as tall as a mountain. They had fearsome appearances with sabers on their backs like 2 wings or curved horns on their heads. Although they looked different, their auras were so formidable that it was as if they could break the entire world. From the Tsunami Star, he had escaped into the space crack with the Ring Spirit where it taught him how to use the abilities of the Bloody Sword and the Shield. Today, at second sky of incipient god realm, he had collected so much energy into his body and comprehended the devouring power Upanishad. He was at his prime condition. At this moment, he wasn't afraid of Spark. Unless it was a real immortal realm expert, Shi Yang was confident that no one could kill him now. The imposing, evil ancient demogons released endless malicious auras. They roared inaudibly and aimed at the 6 transparent serpents. The ancient demogons directly tore and wrestled with the snakes from Spark's incipient extent. They had stirred up the entire area. Amazingly, the demogons didn't look weaker. Quite the contrary, their powers were still increasing. Kill him! Spark bellowed indignantly. A long gold spear descended from the sky with the sharp power of metal that could break anything. Like a gold bolt of lightning, it stabbed right at Shi Yang's glabella. Almost at the same time, rocks piled up under Shi Yang's feet. Pargo emerged bizarrely on the rocks. He pointed his finger and hundreds of mountains jutted out of a massive asteroid as big as a life star, ramming toward Shi Yang. They wanted to crush his bones, indeed. It was a marvelous ability of the earth power Upanishad called Thorny Asteroid. Pargo could use the meteorites presented everywhere in the cosmos to attack. With this special earth power Upanishad, he could crush even an entire planet. If the thorny asteroid impacted a life star, it could explode that life star altogether. As they were afraid that Shi Yang would drive Wedderson here once more time, the chiefs of the Breckelfeld family and the Austin family had launched lethal attacks right when they had just arrived. They attempted to kill Shi Yang in one strike and sent him to reunite with Bloodthirsty. Swallow the sky. Swallow the earth. Shi Yang grinned fiendishly. His incipient extent emerged like a brilliant galaxy or the world at its finest dawn. A mysterious, dark abyss similar to a black hole in the bloodthirsty force's holy land appeared inside his incipient extent, then flew out and floated above the blood sea. A terrifying sucking force came out from that black hole as if it could swallow the sky. The energy fluctuated strangely in this area. All the experts suddenly had a feeling that their souls were about to collapse. Their souls and soul altars didn't listen to their control. They wanted to fly away and fell into that black hole. Spark, Thornton, and Pargo weren't exceptions. Spark changed his face dramatically. He was scared out of his wits and screamed, "Too bad." He had the abilities of the devouring power Upanishad. Don't use the things in your incipient extent to attack him. Use your god power. Use your god power to attack him. 10,000 years ago, Spark was an outstanding warrior of the god clan. He used to see Bloodthirsty, so he knew how gruesome and maleficent the makings of those demogons were. He knew how cunning and lethal the devouring power Upanishad was. Seeing the supernatural ability called Swallow the Sky and Earth, he was shaken as if he could see the overbearing makings of that great devil one more time who had towered the sky and shielded all the light of the stars in the universe. Thornton and Pargo's souls shivered upon hearing him. They paled and changed their power Upanishads. They had hastily drawn back the soul power and the energy of their incipient extent in the gold spear and the thorny asteroid, and replaced them with more god power to bombard Shi Yang. Shi Yang snorted. His muscular body shook. The bloody shield had created a set of natural armor on his body. The marks of blood clouds bloomed like flowers and created drawings like bloody mouths on his body. Boom! Boom! The god spear and the thorny asteroid hit his body hard. The mouth on his armor opened and bit the gold spear. The asteroid barged in and shadowed him, but it couldn't shadow all of the blood halo. The dazzling blood light was still blinding through the cracks between layers of rocks. It was as dazzling as the sharp performance Shi Yang had today. Chapter 1322, Collapsed and Destroyed. Chapter 1322, Collapsed and Destroyed. Spark, Thornton, and Pargo cooperated with each other to urge their power Upanishads and god power to attack Shi Yang, but they couldn't hide his light. The three of them got so shocked. They finally realized that although Shi Yang wasn't bloodthirsty, he had become the biggest hidden calamity to the god clan after he had inherited Bloodthirst's power Upanishads. I'm afraid that this person in the future will be more frightening than Xian He, Ming Hao, or Frederick. We must kill him right now. Spark, Thornton, and Pargo had made up their minds. They had to try their best to kill Shi Yang and clear this obstacle for the future of the God Clan. As they had just made their decision, Shi Yang, the one under the asteroid attack, suddenly gushed out a domineering energy that had shattered even the void. In just a blink of an eye, countless gigantic meteorites had become grains of dust that scattered. Shi Yang had escaped. The vivid red armor on his body had moving light. The blood clouds like an open mouth were moving on his chest plate as if they could chew off people and swallow them all. It was the naturally evil formation of the armor that could absorb all kinds of energy and attack it. The sharp energy of Thornton's God Spear and the asteroids were all swallowed. It had strengthened Shi Yang's intimidation. If this man isn't killed, our clan won't thrive in peace. Spark's face was cold as he spurted out an icy crystal as big as a fingernail. Although it was so small, it was extremely cold. At a close look, the crystal held countless stars inside that made it look like a small-scale galaxy frozen inside a block of ice. It seemed to be a magical and yet unpredictable formation. That small ice crystal was called Celestial Ice Jade Flake. Spark found it inside a broken star while he was wandering around the edge of the sea domain of nihility. There were so many rumors and legends in this vast universe. People said that this cosmos had witnessed changes of many eras after billions of years. In the past dozens of thousands of time, the God Clan, Immortal Demon Clan, Heavenly Monster Tribe, and Imperial Dark Tribe had conquered the universe. However, a long, long time before them, there were more mysterious and ancient civilizations. Because they were too strong and because of their exceeding wars, many galaxies had shattered and disappeared into the sea domain of nihility. Rumors said that a long, long time ago, the number of star areas in this universe was infinite. Each of them was like a small drop in the sea that no one could name them all. Unfortunately, they had gradually exploded and disappeared altogether with the experts. Today, there wasn't even as many as 1,000th of the number of star areas in those eras. Many invincible creatures and their excellent, marvelous weapons had fallen and gone in the sea domain of nihility. Only the immortal realm experts could have the lucky opportunity find the remains of some weapons in that area. Spark had collected this celestial ice jade flake in the outer rim of the sea domain of nihility and he considered it very precious. He guessed that this small piece of jade was broken from some weapon of the ancient experts. Until now, he hadn't really controlled the jade. To tame it, he had spent more than 700 years to mobilize it as he wanted. As soon as he emerged, the void froze rapidly. Shi Yang's blood soul sea was now a frozen blood sea. Thornton and Pargo discolored in fright. They glanced at Spark and retreated simultaneously. At the same time, many Demogan Shi Yangs had turned into pieces of ice when the celestial ice jade flake appeared. Their energy vanished together with the negative energy. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Shi Yang's soul altar squeaked as it was jammed. He had an extremely insecure feeling flooding his inner world. He could even feel his veins quivering. He looked at the small jade, his face somber. The aura from that small piece of jade could cover the entire fiery rainstar area and change it rapidly. Break the sky. He hissed and forced the demon blood to change the space. He felt a sweet tinge of blood at the tip of his tongue. He then spurted out demon blood. His stagnant god power was triggered and it connected to the changes in space, attempting to tear a space slit. Not enough. Spark's face darkened. He shouted and shot a wisp of soul consciousness to that celestial ice jade flake. All of a sudden, the light ripples expanded. It seemed like a massive hand that covered the entire sky and kept it from being torn. I took this celestial ice jade flake from the sea domain of nihility. I had to spend more than 700 years to tame it. With this ice jade, I can fight against even immortal realm expert. How will you stop me now? Spark was cold and arrogant. A wisp of soul emerged on the jade that looked like a child sitting inside the jade. Unexpectedly, he had considered the celestial ice jade flake his life treasure and refined it with his soul and blood. That way, he hoped he could release the most powerful attack from this weapon. It was really tough to refine a life treasure. Not many experts could do that, though. Once they succeeded, the life treasure would connect directly to their owners' lives. When the treasures broke, in the luckiest case, the owner's soul altar would also shatter altogether. However, in most cases, both the soul and the body of the owner were destroyed. Connecting one's life with his weapon wasn't something that ordinary people could make a bet with. However, if someone wanted to refine the life treasure, that item should be as precious as the owner's life. Spark's celestial ice jade flake was his life treasure. It had connected directly to his life. Today, he decided to use his life to counter Shi Yang because of Shi Yang's intimidation. He worried that Shi Yang's existence would bring only disasters to his race. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Noises arose in the void when the space around Shi Yang froze. At this moment, he couldn't use the space power Upanishad to escape. Seeing the cold light sparkling on Spark's life treasure as it was flying toward him, Shi Yang quivered. An extremely insecure feeling flooded him. From that tiny piece of jade, he could feel a tremendous energy that could smash his soul altar. Draw the origin. In this critical moment, Shi Yang pondered and then hissed. Quickly, his sluggish soul altar began to spin crazily. Almost at the same time, energy from many lush forests by the edge of the continent in Grace Mainland, which was in the far-away Agate Star area, was taken away. They withered and dried up instantly. Also, mountains began to collapse and a glacier melted. All were because of the great change of earth and heaven energy. A flow of immense energy from an immemorial, primal time emerged in Shi Yang's soul. Swoosh. The blood sword that had turned into the Demogon phantoms now reappeared like a blood-red bolt above his head. Just like a small lightning bolt, it dashed fast inside a small space. The bloody shield on Shi Yang's body also revived. The blood clouds wiggled and released many thick and vicious clouds that fell onto the bloody sword. At the same time, Shi Yang had sent his god power, negative energy, demon blood, and star energy into the bloody sword. Strangely, the bloody sword wasn't swollen up. It shrunk. After it had absorbed an intimidating amount of energy, it had shrunk to the size of a hand like a small flying shuttle. Countless eyes on the sword opened at once, blood dripping from their corners. It looked so evil and peculiar. Go. Shi Yang looked at the jade flake. The small blood sword disappeared all of a sudden. Bang! A crispy clanging sounded. The void then shattered, and pieces of broken space were shelled massively. In just a blink of an eye, several hundred battleships disappeared and thousands of God Clan warriors were annihilated. The chaotic current of Space Basin gushed out from the shattered void, flowing into the fiery Rainstar area and attempting to turn it into nothing. It was the drastic change created by the impact between the blood sword and the jade flake. After a crunchy noise, the jade flake and the bloody sword moved like shuttles in the space current. Blood bled from 7 natural holes on Shi Yang's face. He looked so fearsome. Spark's body and countenance didn't change. When the celestial ice jade flake had a crack, his soul altar also had a crack. It was a serious soul wound. Spark's pupils also had cracks like a china item that got hit hard. He tried to press down the terrible pain in his soul altar as he shouted, "What are you waiting for? We don't need the fiery Rainstar area anymore. It can become nothing, but this man must die. If he lives for 1,000 years more, he will become another bloodthirsty." Then, he couldn't worry about more things and he immediately jumped into the chaotic space current. He followed his soul sensitivity to search his celestial ice jade flake. He looked calm on the surface, but his inner world was scorching as it was burning. However, the celestial ice jade flake had cracks and now, it was stirred around in the turbulent space current. If he couldn't retrieve it to fix the cracks, not only would his realm reduce but his soul altar would also fragment. He had to seize any second and any minute. Thornton and Pargo were bewildered as they looked at the shattering void and the colorful, radiant storm wreaking havoc inside the space current. They were so panic-stricken. The immortal realm experts engaging in a furious battle could cause the collapse of an entire star area and make it disappear. They suddenly recalled what their precursors used to say. They could never estimate that Shi Yang and Spark could reach the attack level of the immortal realm experts. The shockwave from their impact had collapsed this star area. The two then discolored in fear. Thundering, Spark jumped into the turbulent space current, which had frightened them more. Thus, they didn't dare to listen to Spark's order to seize the chance and kill Shiyang. They were so afraid. They didn't know that Shiyang's condition at this moment was so unstable that they could destroy his soul with one strike. After hesitating, they hovered still and gave Shiyang a chance to recover. Crack, crack, crack. It sounded like a massive crystal that was shattering. The sky cracked and the earth split. Everything in this area was crushed. Many members of the God clan had vanished. Everything accelerated so rapidly. Mad Wedison hadn't attacked yet, but with one full power strike from Shiyang and Spark, this star area would collapse. If this phenomenon expanded, this massive fiery rain star area was going to disappear utterly in this sea of stars. At this moment, Shiyang, the expert with space power Upanishad at second sky of incipient God realm, was the only one who could stabilize the space here. However, his condition was the most unstable. What made people more frustrated was that Wedison had come with his insanity to pour more oil into the fire. He screamed and roared, bringing his lethal magnetic field that stormed into the most chaotic area in this place. Chapter 1323, Set Up Earth and Heaven. Chapter 1323, Set Up Earth and Heaven. Ancient Demon Continent. Ming Hao, Xian He, and Frederick were watching the void mirror, their faces both grave and heavy. Sparks and Shiyang's divine weapons had impacted and shattered the void, causing the turbulent space current to flow into Fiery Rainstar area. Thus, Fiery Rainstar area was now in the most chaotic situation. It would gradually disappear into nihility. It was the calamity that both the bloodthirsty force and the God clan didn't want to see. He has only second sky of incipient God realm, but he could forcefully resist Spark and hurt his soul. He's worthy of being our master's successor. Frederick gave a slight nod. Xian He rubbed his chin and contemplated. I'm sure he's not okay now. Although he used the origin to trigger his potential, the differences between their realms are too big. His wound shouldn't be less serious than Spark's. However, he paused for a while, his voice amused. Thornton and Pargo were shocked when they saw his attack. They didn't seize this once in a blue moon chance. They gave him time to recover. Thornton and Pargo would never be able to imagine how fast he could recover using the devouring power Upanishad. They were just little children in the previous era, so they don't know our master's magical power Upanishad. Frederick laughed strangely. Fiery Rainstar area is shattering. Without an external force to stop it, Fiery Rainstar area will disappear and merge with the sea domain of nihility. Ming Hao winced and pondered. Then, he sent out a wisp of his soul. His soul moved like a shuttle between different spaces and searched for something. After a long time, Ming Hao squinted and couldn't hide his sigh. Xian He threw him a glance and asked, "De Carlos doesn't want to help?" Ming Hao nodded. "I'm always curious. You were the most prominent leader of the new generation of Imperial Dark Tribe that year. Our master killed your teacher. Why could you?" asked Xian He skeptically. Ming Hao suddenly snorted and said, "Well, weren't you, Ming Hao, the leader of Immortal Demon Clan? You followed our master too. De Carlos doesn't want to come and Fiery Rainstar area still has that mysterious Wedison. It's really annoying. If Shiyang can't stabilize the chaotic star area after 1 hour, I'll go there personally." Xian He frowned and spoke impatiently. "You want me to go, don't you?" "Yeah, my clone can't go there. You have to go there, then." Ming Hao paused for a while and then lowered his voice. "That guy named Wedison has a normal profile, but he is making a really big commotion. He got something I can't see through." Ming Hao had his soul scatter in many star areas. When he was talking with Xian He and Frederick here, his other soul had investigated Wedison's profile thoroughly through his shortcuts. If you get there, you must focus on discovering Wedison's secret. I always felt that Gado's aura on his body was even stranger than when Gado was still alive. Ming Hao didn't make himself clear. Xian He's eyes sparkled. He coldly looked at the void mirror and said nothing. At this moment, Shiyang wasn't all right. It could be said that he was in danger. If Thornton and Pargo struck him one, he would collapse immediately. He would have been burst to death. Both his soul and body would perish at the same time. At this moment, his tears of the soul altar seemed to break, and the connection between the sea of consciousness, power Upanishads, and incipient extent was cut off. His soul was uncontrollable to defend. Even a normal incipient God realm expert could kill him easily. All were because of the impact with Spark's celestial ice jade flake. Spark was at the false immortal realm with exquisite and compressed God power. The celestial ice jade flake was the life treasure that he had collected and tamed for hundreds of years from the sea domain of nihility. The abundant energy in this tiny jade flake could crush some life stars for sure. The impact he got had affected his soul altar and fractured the tears. Shi Yang was lucky that Thornton and Pargo were so scared that they didn't dare to attack him. Otherwise, he would have died already. The acupuncture points in his body were crazily revolving. The refined energy was now the mysterious, pure energy diffusing from 720 acupuncture points. They dripped and moved toward his sea of consciousness. Starting from the sea of consciousness, the fracture of his soul altar was mended at a fast speed. Spark's soul was damaged poorly, but he could only suppress the pain and jump into the chaotic space current to search for his life treasure. Shi Yang got more severe wounds, but he could use the power of the devouring power Upanishad to stabilize his soul altar using the energy he had converted. He could heal his body's conditions really fast. Wedderson, wake up! Wake up! Thornton shouted ear-piercingly, his face grimaced and his body quivering insecurely. Thornton and Pargo were with the God Clan troops. At this moment, many warriors of their families were drowning in the space current. They perished by the shockwaves from the impact between Shi Yang and Spark. This sea of stars area was collapsing little by little like a shattering piece of glass. The remaining battleships of the God Clan retreated for their lives when they heard Thornton screaming. The energy from the divine crystal was stimulated to the maximum level. They looked like a shower of meteors retreating away. The battleships carrying the God warriors needed more time to leave, and when Wedderson came, he came with destruction. His deadly field accelerated the collapsing speed of the sea of stars. It would kill more warriors who couldn't run fast enough. Thornton bellowed again. Too bad for him, Wedderson didn't notice him at all and glided at an even faster speed. Use the brutal extinguishing God leaf, Pargo thundered. Hurry up. Thornton frowned deeply. His eyes sparkled with a strange light. He looked at Shi Yang in the distance and the coming Wedderson before hesitating. Our fate can be changed even if the brutal extinguishing godleaf can kill Shi Yang. That mad Wedderson will destroy the entire fiery rainstar area. Our warriors and we will be killed quickly. Deal with him. As long as he doesn't come here, we still have a chance to overturn the situation. Shi Yang will never get rid of our God Clan's pursuit later. Pargo howled. Eventually, Thornton wasn't hesitant anymore. The weapon that the Elder Committee had poured the magical energy into had turned into a gold light that flew toward Wedderson. The small gold leaf flew out and immediately turned into a massive shining gold light curtain that was carved with millions of complex and magical symbols and aligned in formations. There were as many symbols as small veins inside the human body. There were so many and they were mysterious, indeed. At this moment, all looked revived. Millions of mysterious symbols released energy at the same time. A flow of force as seething as an ocean bloomed from that gold light curtain. Just like a gold light column that could pierce through the blue dome of the sky, it shot directly at Wedderson. Millions of symbols on the light curtain began to move and explode at once. Rumble. 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 Countless gold waves swarmed toward Wedderson, each carrying millions of shockwaves with unlimited attacking energy. Mad Wedderson came with his deadly field added with Gaddo's aura that could erode anything in this world. After the gold waves attacked him, his field couldn't do anything. The formidable energy exploded inside the gold rolls of waves bombarded him and hammered his body. He convulsed continuously as if he got electrocuted. Boom. Wedderson's chest swelled. His body was hit backward as he pushed himself towards a death trap abyss. He couldn't risk his life to move forward to stop Thornton, Pargo, or approach Shi Yang. The great weapon called Brutal Extinguishing God Leaf of the God Clan was truly intimidating. Finally, they had stopped Wedison's brutality and pushed him into a dark abyss where no one could see him. Right at this moment, Shi Yang, who was still at his spot inside the chaotic space current, suddenly disappeared in front of Thornton and Pargo. The galaxy in front of Thornton and Pargo looked like it was a torn sheet of fabric, and the tear was expanding. It was a disappearing process of the star area. The turbulent space current was flooding that area. Gust of winds that could wash away the soul existed together with other sharp forces that could tear even the bodies of incipient God Realm experts. Move. Head to the sea territory. We must get back to our ancestral star. Thornton and Pargo screamed hoarsely. The remaining battleships of the God Clan didn't care about attacking hexagonal starland anymore. They changed their direction and crazily flew towards the sea territory of Fiery Rainstar area. They wanted to get back to ancient Godstar area through the space passage. At the same time, Fiery Rainstar area's warriors who were hiding in hexagonal starland also saw the changes of the doomsday. They screamed hopelessly and flew out of hexagonal starland, running toward the sea territory. Inside the chaotic space basin, countless rapid and violent currents with unknown lights rolled and exploded like a fierce waterfall that splashed everywhere. Shi Yang hovered still inside a strange light. His acupuncture points crazily took in energy. Only the experts with high attainment in space power Upanishad could move freely in a dangerous place like this. Thus, half of the god warriors sinking in the space currents were killed. Shi Yang had unconsciously absorbed their energy and converted it to the pure energy to heal his soul altar. Shortly after, new flows of energy rolled into his soul altar. That's how his fractured soul altar was healed. Shi Yang's soul consciousness moved. He grinned fiendishly and left the seething space currents. He reappeared in the most chaotic area of Fiery Rainstar area. He touched his forehead and the incipient extent emerged. The rivers of stars bobbed and flowed out of his incipient extent and carried spatial abilities within. Just like countless god hands, they began to smoothen and heal the large tear in the void. His face was focused and he was squinting. He was showing all of his years of attainment in space power Upanishad to amend this area. It was a deep tracing back to the origin of the space power Upanishad. His soul consciousness moved like a shuttle that weaved the tears together. It was extremely marvelous. His brilliant galaxy-like incipient extent was now a small universe with many strange, small stars. It looked like spaces between the stars were reduced. While he was fixing the space, the mysterious energy from the acupuncture points was still pouring into his sea of consciousness and soul altar. He had tried his best to fix the tear in the void so he didn't notice that his incipient extent was expanding like a real, open universe as more mysterious energy was pouring in. Shi Yang had a magical feeling as his incipient extent and the acupuncture points in his body were connected delicately and exquisitely. Shi Yang had a touching but unknown feeling. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.